911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hello?
Hi, this is 911.
Is this the cop?
Sir, tell me exactly what happened.
Well, I killed somebody.
You killed somebody?
Yes, sir.
Roswell, New Mexico is a city renowned for its captivating connection to extraterrestrial phenomena. Nestled in the southeastern part of the state, Roswell gained global recognition following the alleged UFO incident of 1947. Embracing its distinctive identity as the alien capital of the world, Roswell beckons curious visitors from far and wide to explore its UFO museums, partake in extraterrestrial-themed events, and delve deep into the mysteries surrounding the infamous Roswell incident. However, beyond its reputation, Roswell became an unexpected backdrop for an astonishing breakthrough in a long-standing cold case in 2023. The case of 69-year-old William Blodgett, who mysteriously vanished on December 23, 2008, in Roswell, New Mexico, captivated people's attention for over a decade. Unlike the city's famous association with extraterrestrial encounters, his disappearance was not attributed to alien abduction or otherworldly phenomena. Nevertheless, it remained an unanswered enigma that puzzled investigators and the community for a staggering 15 years. On January 3, 2009, William Blodgett's son, Greg Blodgett, filed a report regarding his father's disappearance. According to George's account, neither he, his girlfriend, nor the rest of their family had seen William since late December of the previous year. The delayed report presented a challenge for the investigators, as over 10 days had already passed since William Blodgett's disappearance. Nonetheless, this did not deter from them carrying out their duties with the utmost diligence. In the course of formal investigations, the police focused their attention on William's tenant as the primary suspect. Greg's girlfriend informed the authorities that the tenant had even been involved in an argument or altercation with William, who had been attempting to evict him. However, lacking substantial evidence to further interrogate the tenant, he was eventually cleared of suspicion and no longer considered a viable suspect in the case. In their pursuit of answers, the authorities engaged in extensive conversation with Blodgett's family, friends, and neighbors. They also visited the residence that Blodgett shared with his tenant, only to find it seemingly abandoned, with personal belongings left behind. Despite their thorough search, the police discovered no immediate indications of foul play. Blodgett's vehicle remained at the premises, further deepening the mystery surrounding his disappearance. In a desperate attempt to uncover any potential evidence, cadaver dogs were deployed, hoping to detect any traces that could provide crucial leads. Regrettably, their efforts yielded no significant breakthroughs, leaving the investigators grappling with the perplexing and frustrating absence of tangible evidence. Detectives diligently maintained periodic surveillance of the house, hoping to catch any signs of activity or potential leads. However, despite their vigilant efforts, they never spotted anyone associated with the case. As time went on, the available leads gradually dwindled, and the investigation reached a point where all viable leads had been exhausted. The case eventually went cold. After 15 years of dormancy, when all hopes for justice seemed to have faded away, an unexpected turn of events jolted the cold case back to life. On May 1, 2023, a sudden and surprising call was made to emergency services, altering the trajectory of the long-forgotten investigation. In a surprise twist, 37-year-old Tommy Peralta, the former tenant of William Blodgett, was the one who made the call. He had found himself burdened by the weight of the lies he had been living under. Perhaps consumed by guilt or a desire for redemption, Tony Peralta decided to break his silence and confront the truth that had haunted him. When the police officers arrived at the designated location disclosed by Tony Peralta, they discovered him seated on the curb near a convenience store in a small southeastern New Mexico community. It was there that Peralta had borrowed a cell phone, allowing him to make the pivotal call to 911 and confess to the shocking act of killing his landlord 15 years prior.
911, what's the address of your emergency? Hello, 911.
Hello?
Hi, this is 911.
Yes, I'm at All Steps by Big Lot.
Okay.
Is this the cop?
Sir, tell me exactly what happened.
Well, I killed somebody.
You killed somebody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you said you're at the All Steps over there at Country Club in Maine, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hold on 1 second for me, okay? I'm going to get some help over there for you.
Here you go.
In a state of perspiration and seeking solace in puffs from his cigarette, Tony Peralta expressed his exhaustion with the burden of concealing the truth. Burdened by a life of deception and weighed down by guilt, he willingly confessed his readiness to guide the officers to the location where he had buried the body. Taking a stand, he offered his wrist to be handcuffed, ready to face the consequences of his actions and bring closure to the long-standing mystery surrounding William Blodgett's disappearance.
I just wanted to refer to murder that I did a long time ago.
Okay, a long time ago?
Yeah,
Or today?
a long time ago.
What is that?
I buried him in his house
Okay.
on 5th Street.
What's the address?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, sir.
How'd you get over here? You walked?
Yeah,
This is a long time ago, is what he's saying.
I'm just tired of covering it up already.
Try to cover it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
In response to a records request by the Associated Press, the police in Roswell decided to release the 911 recording and nearly an hour of officer body camera footage.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right, just hang on, okay? Relax, relax, relax. No. Just say name. Call 911.
I did.
You did? Yeah, we already got the guy.
The recordings provided a glimpse into the pivotal moment when Tony Peralta made the confession.
So, I'm gonna take him up there. And see if he was willing to show me the house, and then we'll just, you know.
What year?
Huh?
What year?
I haven't figured it out yet. I literally just was hearing conversation stuff. So, what year was this at? You don't remember? Okay.
It's been so long.
It's been a long time. Okay, we're gonna go all the way around over here. Okay, my car's way over there, so we're gonna walk this way. Yep.
Thank you guys for coming.
Absolutely.
The footage captured Peralta expressing gratitude to the officers for responding and picking him up.
Tony,
Yeah.
here's the deal, brother. We need some more details
All right, what do you
to
want?
be able to prove it.
Okay,
So let's start at the beginning.
okay.
What year do you think this was?
I don't remember.
How old do you think you were?
I don't remember.
What does the victim look like? Or what
I
did the
don't
victim
remember.
look like? What do you mean you don't remember?
I don't remember. I just know that I killed him.
Why do you know that?
Because I know that I killed him and I kept it a secret.
Okay.
As the uniformed officers and detectives engaged in conversation with Tony Peralta, they saw answers to critical questions about the timeline, method, and motive behind the killing.
It's my understanding you're willing to take us to the house.
Yeah,
Did it happen at the house?
it did.
It did?
I was on meth really bad,
Okay.
and I killed him because he didn't give me no money.
However, to their disappointment, Peralta struggled to provide coherent answers. His memory seemed to fail him, leaving gaps in his recollection of the events surrounding the crime. Despite Tony Peralta appearing to be under the influence of alcohol during his interview, he remained determined to guide the officers to the location where he had committed the crime.
It's right here. The next house.
This white one?
This white one here?
Yeah. I buried him in that slight place right here.
However, his memory initially failed him, and he struggled to recall the precise whereabouts of the scene. Recognizing the significance of finding the exact spot, the police officers provided assistance and support, working collaboratively with Peralta.
I'm sorry?
Why didn't they smell his body in there?
I don't know. Hang on, okay?
What's it saying?
Saying pretty much all the way back is where you buried him.
Inside the shed?
Yeah, this has a little shed
Inside
thing.
of it?
That's what he's saying.
With their guidance, Peralta eventually arrived at the designated location, enabling the investigation to proceed further and potentially uncover crucial evidence related to the crime. Once Tony Peralta and the police officers arrived at the designated location of the crime scene, Peralta directed them to a specific spot where he had committed the act and subsequently buried Blodgett. His finger pointed towards an area that appeared to be an additional room attached to the main home. Upon receiving this new information from Tony Peralta, the police meticulously cross-referenced it with the old report regarding William Blodgett's disappearance. To their astonishment, they discovered that law enforcement officials had indeed harbored suspicions towards Peralta during the initial investigation, prompting them to conduct a search of the house. However, at that time, no substantial evidence had been found to support their suspicions. The police, now driven by a renewed curiosity, sought to unravel the mystery surrounding why the investigators had failed to locate and why even the cadaver dogs had been unable to detect any scent at the time.
Why didn't they smell his body in there?
I don't know.
Driven by overwhelming guilt, Tony Peralta provided the police with precise information regarding the location where he had buried William Blodgett.
Where's he at inside the house?
I don't know.
Huh? Where did you bury him?
On the side house right there.
Okay. What part?
The part right there?
Yeah, but what part of that room?
The left side.
The left side?
Yeah, if you pull the board up and dig them up.
Okay. On the left side of the building?
Yeah.
So that's towards the courthouse?
Yes.
Okay. Which way is his head pointed?
I don't know.
Which way are his feet pointed?
I don't know.
How is he laying in there?
He's just dead. I don't know.
How deep is he buried?
Not very far.
Not very far?
Nope.
Are we talking like inches?
Yep.
Or like feet?
Inches.
Inches.
Yep. You'll find him.
You think he's decayed?
Oh yeah.
How long do you think it's been?
Too damn long.
Too damn long?
Yes, sir.
What was he wearing?
I don't remember.
Was he wearing clothes?
Yes.
Or did you bury him naked?
I buried him with clothes.
With clothes?
Yes.
Did he have shoes on?
I don't remember.
Did he wear glasses?
I don't remember.
What type of person? Was he white? Was he Hispanic?
I think he was white.
Black?
I don't know.
You don't know what he was?
Mm-hmm.
Armed with shovels and flashlights, the officers commenced the meticulous process of excavating the indicated burial site. With each scoop of soil, the anticipation grew, and the tension in the air was palpable. As they persisted in their search, their efforts were ultimately rewarded when they unearthed the remains of William Blodgett.
Well, if it's 7 years or more ago, I'm not going to lose anything.
Check that. Yep.
Back at the police station, as the officers questioned him for further details and additional information, Peralta began to unravel.
Well, it's off your shoulders now, man.
During further interrogation, Tony Peralta revealed a chilling admission. He acknowledged as using a screwdriver as the weapon to end William Blodgett's life. However, when pressed for more details about the incident, Peralta's memory faltered, and he confessed to having no recollection of the specific events of that fateful day. With remorse etched on his face, Peralta conveyed to the police that there were no significant reason for his heinous act, and that he couldn't offer any excuse to justify his actions.
He was always good to me, and I took his life for no reason. And I don't have an excuse.
On May 30th, 2023, Tony Peralta's arraignment for the charge of first-degree murder was scheduled. However, to the surprise of many, Peralta did not attend the hearing. This unexpected turn of events added a new layer of complexity to the case, leaving authorities and legal professionals to speculate on the reasons behind his absence. Moreover, Tony Peralta entered a plea of not guilty to the charge of first-degree murder, as communicated by his public defender, Ray Conley. Conley, respecting the legal process, refrained from providing any comments following the hearing. With the plea established, the case would now proceed through the court system, with Peralta's defense team working to ensure his due process rights are upheld. A trial date was set for October, although the judge acknowledged that the date might be subject to change as the legal proceedings unfold. While the case may not have reached a definitive closure yet, The confession made by Tony Peralta and the information he provided has significantly altered the trajectory of the investigation. Peralta's admission of guilt and the details he shared with law enforcement authorities have provided valuable evidence that will likely contribute to the legal proceeding. The confession strengthens the case against Peralta and suggests a potential future behind bars for him. Chickamauga is a city in Walker County, Georgia, United States. Chickamauga has an overall crime rate of 9 per 1,000 residents, making the crime rate here near the average for all cities and towns of all sizes in America. Despite being a relatively safer city, Chickamauga became the town where a man named Donald Ficky Jr. met his tragic fate. Donald was born on November 14, 1988, to the couple Donald Edward Ficky and Kathy Ficky. Soon, all his loved ones began calling him DJ. DJ grew up in Chickamauga, Walker County, Georgia, along with his 3 sisters, Amanda, Crystal, and Allison. DJ lost his father when he was only 14. He and his father were extremely close, and processing such a great loss at such a young age took a toll on DJ's mental health. Amanda, DJ's sister, said that he never completely got over his father's untimely death.
He was a daddy's boy. His daddy meant everything to him, and he never got over my dad's death.
She described DJ as someone who prioritized making others happy. He was a friend to everyone.
Always laughing. Everybody was in a good mood when he was around. It was like his priority to make everyone happy.
DJ met a girl named Brandy while in school, but they only started dating a few years after graduating. They got married in 2014. By the time he was 27 in 2016, he was already a father of a boy and twin girls named Peyton, Jackie, and Paisley. DJ was a loving husband, father, son, and brother. DJ was a social drug user who eventually developed a drug problem. He would only consume drugs when someone else was consuming it with him. However, his drug abuse problem escalated because of his wife, Brandy. She was a heavy drug user, and it worsened the case for DJ. However, he ended up going to rehab, and there was a significant change in him after that.
Doing good. My brother didn't want anything more than to live happily ever after like any other family.
He gained an interest in MMA fighting and began training for it. He focused all his energy into that. DJ was finally doing well in his life. While DJ had emerged victorious in his battle with drug abuse, that wasn't the case for Brandy. Her drug addiction was getting worse by the day. As DJ was trying to stay clean, Brandy consuming heavy doses of drugs right in front of him didn't help him at all. It ultimately started to take a toll on their marriage. This led to a lot of arguments between the couple, and things started to get messy for them. Brandy would often leave the house to go to her drug supplier, Marshall Ralph Payne, a man in his early 40s, and spend hours with him at his place. Sometimes she would even stay the night with Marshall. DJ and his family always referred to Marshall as the roommate.
Brandy would continue to go back to the roommate because Brandy had a drug problem, and the roommate was supplying her with drugs. That's why she would leave my brother.
DJ and Brandy had met Marshall through a friend of a friend. From the beginning, DJ and Marshall didn't get along. DJ didn't like the fact that Marshall supplied Brandy with drugs, and he didn't like them spending so much time together. But at the end of the day, DJ loved his family, and for the sake of his children, he would often end up going to Marshall's house, begging Brandy to come home. Sometimes Brandy would come back, but there were times when Brandy wouldn't budge. Soon, what DJ feared the most happened. Noticing Brandy's frequent visits to Marshall's place, it didn't take long for DJ to figure out that Brandy was having an affair with Marshall. This love triangle only made things more difficult for DJ than they already were, but he didn't give up and still hoped that he could convince Brandy to come home and leave Marshall for good. DJ's trips to Marshall's place to bring Brandy home became more frequent, and he and Marshall would often end up having a verbal argument and sometimes even a physical altercation. On one particular occasion, Marshall put a knife to DJ's throat to threaten him. Another time, Marshall beat DJ with a golf club, and DJ fought back with a bat.
The roommate actually put a knife to his throat and attacked him with a golf club, and my brother grabbed a bat and they was fighting each other with that.
Even after all this, DJ remained incredibly loyal to his wife. He wanted to make things work with Brandy and save their marriage. And one day, DJ's hard work paid off. By the end of September 2016, DJ and Brandy got back together, and he made peace with Marshall as well. DJ was over the moon, and had even called his family to let them in on the news he was so happy about. But this happiness was short-lived. Everything came crashing down on Monday, October 3rd, 2016, when DJ, Brandy, and Marshall were hanging out at a house somewhere in Georgia, which was commonly known as the Drug Den. The owner of this house was only referred to as the Old Man. The house was open for anyone who wanted to hang out there. And on that particular day, it was DJ, Brandy, and Marshall who had occupied the space. Things took a turn for the worst when a heated argument broke out between DJ and Marshall. Kathy, DJ's mother, started to receive a string of text messages from DJ, begging her to pick him up. In one of those messages, DJ even wrote that if he stayed there, he would end up dead.
He was texting me and telling me, Mom, if you don't come and get me, I'm going to die here.
Kathy was quite sick at that time. Her heart's functioning had reduced to 20%, and her doctor had advised her to stay away from stressful situations. Apart from that, Kathy was staying in Alabama that day, and the house where DJ was at was a 45-minute drive away. DJ continued to text Kathy for about 20 more minutes, and just 3 minutes after sending his last text to her, sometime around 1 p.m., the 911 operators received a call from Marshall.
Walker County 911. Yes, sir. I need a ambulance at,
Okay, what's the problem?
we got a guy shot himself.
Okay, what did he shoot himself with?
Shotgun.
Okay, is he breathing?
It looks like it. I don't know. I just think
how old is he?
So I tried to get the gun. And it went off. And he hurt his mouth. And I was like, man, you know.
What is it, a 12 gauge?
Yeah.
Is he still able to talk? Is he still able to talk?
No. I mean, he stuck it in his mouth.
All right. Is he still breathing?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Hang on one second. I'm getting everybody going. How old is he? How old is he? How old is he? Walk Central, Packet 803, Station 2, respond.
In the call, Marshall can be heard saying that DJ shot himself in the mouth using a shotgun. He said that he tried to get the gun away from DJ, but the gun went off. In the background, Brandy can be heard screaming and shouting as Marshall responds to her before ending the call. The next call was made by the 911 operator to Marshall.
How old is he? How old is he? How old is he?
I'm 27.
27?
Yeah.
Okay, is he still breathing? Where's the damage done to his head?
It's right in his mouth. It's right.
It's inside his mouth?
With me.
Okay. Is there an exit wound? Is there an exit wound? Is there an exit wound?
Yeah. What's his mouth? What's his mouth?
Is he breathing?
He's breathing.
He is responding. 27-year-old male advised that he had a gun in his mouth. There was a discharge. There is an exit wound. Possibly still breathing. We're still attempting to gain further. Is he breathing? What's your name?
My name's Come on, Spade. You're losing. Come on. I got my hands full.
Is he inside the house? Is he inside the house?
No, man.
Where's he at?
I don't know.
Is he inside the house? Is he in a car? Is he in a room?
No,
where's he at?
In the front door.
He's in a chair in the front door.
Yes.
All right. Is he still sitting in the chair? He's what? His name is CJ?
Yeah, it's 12 gauge.
Okay, I know it's 12 gauge.
Yeah.
Is he breathing though? Is he moving at all?
He's complaining. I tried to grab a gun from him, and she thinks I am. Will you please just send a ambulance?
I've got the ambulance, sheriff's department, and the fire department coming. Okay. I need to know if
An officer from the Georgia Police Department was dispatched at 1:12 p.m. and arrived at the scene by 1:22 p.m. Marshall and Brandy were outside the house waiting for him. As the detective walked in, he found a shotgun placed next to a shelf, and not far away was DJ, lying cold and lifeless on a chair in the living room. He was shirtless and was only wearing slip-on shoes. There was a severe wound on his face, which was consistent with a gunshot wound, and there were no signs of a pulse. A large amount of blood covered DJ's face, chest, and stomach. At first glance, the detective deduced that the barrel had been placed on DJ's left cheek, just at the corner of the lip, when the bullet left the gun. He noted that DJ hadn't left a note, and there was a towel covered in blood found in the trash can. The medical aid arrived soon, but it was already too late. They pronounced the 27-year-old DJ dead on October 3, 2016. The detective started questioning Brandy and Marshall. He asked Brandy if she was around, if she had seen anything when the crime took place. Brandy was in shock and couldn't speak a word at the time. When the detective questioned Marshall, he stated that he had only come to visit his friend here at the house. When he walked in, he found that both DJ and Brandy were in two separate bathrooms in the house, so he decided to wait in the bedroom. Moments later, he heard a gunshot and walked out of the living room only to find DJ covered in blood on the chair. A few things about Marshall's statement were inconsistent with what he said earlier on the 911 call, but the detective chose not to point it out right away, as it would scare Marshall and he might refrain from talking at all. When DJ's mother, Kathy, was informed about her son's death, she immediately argued that there was no way he could take his own life. She claimed that it was a homicide and went on to show the text messages DJ had sent her.
Mom called me and she was just hysterical. I couldn't understand anything she was saying. And just out of nowhere, she blurted out, DJ's dead. And that was the worst day of my life.
An investigation was launched based on Kathy's claim, and it turned out that DJ was texting Kathy from Marshall's phone. Messages on both phones were cross-checked, and no inconsistencies were found. On October 4, 2016, the detective spoke with Kathy again. She told them that she was sure that Marshall had killed DJ. She also stated that DJ was thriving in his life, and it didn't make sense that he would take his own life. On October 5, 2016, the detectives interviewed Brandy at the Walker County Sheriff's Office. She was still upset, but was able to talk about the incident this time. Brandy told the detectives that on the morning of October 3, 2016, she and DJ had been arguing in the living room of the house, while Marshall was in the bedroom. When that stopped, DJ started to text Kathy using Marshall's phone, and she left to fix her hair. When she came back to the living room, she saw Marshall storm out of the bedroom with a shotgun in his hand. Brandy said that Marshall shot DJ in the face right in front of her, while he was seated on the chair in the living room. She also added that there were 2 more people present in the house at the time, who left shortly after the incident took place. Brandy stated that those 2 people would back up Marshall's story and not hers. Those 2 people remain unnamed. That same evening, the detectives questioned Marshall again, and his story changed again this time. He accepted that there were 2 other people present in the house when the incident took place, but maintained the claim that DJ shot himself. Marshall even took a polygraph test, which showed deceptive observations, but nothing could be ascertained from its results. An autopsy was conducted on DJ's body on the morning of October 5, 2016, by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The medical examiner was told that DJ had taken his own life. When the report from the medical examiner's office came back, it stated DJ's cause of death as a self-inflicted intraoral gunshot wound. The report stated that the bullet had entered through the lower left side of his mouth and exited through the right side of his head. The district attorney had already signed the report, and based on this report, DJ's death was ruled as self-inflicted, and the case was closed. A few days later, with a heavy heart and hundreds of unanswered questions, DJ's family cremated him. On Wednesday, October 12, 2016, a small memorial was held at W.L. Wilson & Sons Funeral Home by DJ's family, where all his loved ones gathered to remember him. However, DJ's family was not convinced that DJ took his own life. It wasn't making any sense to them. They fought hard to bring justice to their beloved DJ for years.
Donald Ficky Jr.'s death was ruled a but family members believe it was a homicide.
Amanda Shirley, DJ's sister, said that DJ loved his kids too much and there was no way he would harm himself. Amanda and the rest of DJ's family believed Marshall had killed him because the 2 men were in a love triangle with DJ's wife, Brandy. DJ's family felt deceived, as the police department had been ignorant of their claims. For 4 years, DJ's family tried to convince the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to reopen his case. In 2020, officials took a second look at his autopsy report and updated DJ's cause of death to undetermined. His family decided they needed to take the investigation into their own hands and hired a private investigator named Eric Eccles. Amanda ran a Justice for DJ Twitter page and regularly spoke to news outlets and true crime podcasts about her brother's death, hoping to bring enough attention to it so that the investigators would take a closer look. Eric, the private investigator, believed law enforcement had gone about the investigation poorly and there was enough evidence to secure Marshall's involvement in DJ's death. Eric highlighted the fact that the police interviewed the witnesses poorly. He said that the police talked to all of the witnesses together, and they never separated them. He also pointed out that there were very few photos of the crime scene. Eric said something didn't add up from the beginning. He also added that he had experts review his findings, and they had agreed DJ's death was definitely a homicide.
He was texting her up until the time he got shot. Mom, come get me. I don't feel safe. It wasn't, Ma, I'm gonna take my life.
At the time Eric was looking into the case in 2020, Walker County Sheriff Steve Wilson was asked whether his office would reopen the case now that DJ's cause of death had been updated. The case will not be reopened simply because the medical examiner changed the manner of death to undetermined. Should new evidence be discovered, the sheriff's office will evaluate the evidence and proceed accordingly, he said. Despite this statement, in a turn of events, the department did eventually reopen the investigation, and as a result of some undisclosed new evidence, a Walker County grand jury indicted the 50-year-old Marshall Ralph Payne back in April 2023, followed by his arrest on June 6, 2023 in Murray County. 7 long and hard years later, my fight was not in vain. All my hard work and never giving up paid off, and I upheld my promise to my brother that I wouldn't stop, Amanda said in a Facebook post dated June 7, 2023. DJ left behind 2 daughters and a son who says he wants to be a detective when he grows up to solve cases like his father's. Amanda has also helped other people investigate unsolved murders. She says she plans to keep doing that, even after this case is over. Hartford is the capital city of Connecticut and a vibrant hub of culture, history, and economic activity. But Hartford also experiences significant gun violence, which had a detrimental impact on the community, and our victim was also caught in a similar scheme of events. On June 22, 2019, authorities in Hartford, Connecticut responded to reports of gunshots on Winship Street. When they arrived at the scene, they discovered a wounded man in his 30s who had been shot. He was swiftly taken to the Hartford Hospital, where he underwent urgent surgery and eventually made a full recovery. Tragically, near the location, officers found another individual inside a vehicle who had been fatally shot. The deceased individual was identified as 24-year-old Eros Diaz, a resident of Avon, Connecticut. Born on January 11, 1995, Eros spent his formative years in Hartford as the son of J.M. Diaz and Catherine or Aquino Diaz.
He's a son. He's an uncle. He's a grandson. He's a brother. They don't see it like that.
At the age of 11, he relocated to Rocky Hill and later to Avon, where he graduated from Avon High School in 2014. Eros was actively involved as a managing partner alongside his father in New Ways Incorporated. Eros Diaz had encountered legal issues in the past. In 2016, he faced a federal conviction for the distribution of crack cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. As a result, he was sentenced to a 45-month prison term and 100 hours of community service. Tragically, just 3 years after this, he would meet his demise. When officers from the Hartford Police Department responded to the crime scene, they couldn't find any clues as to what had happened. There was just one piece of evidence that seemed important to the police, and that was a hat. Due to the lack of evidence and suspects, the case soon went cold. There were no leads in the case, even after 4 years of Eros's death. Deeply affected by the loss, in 2023, Eros's family offered a substantial reward for $500,000 for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the responsible party. Even though Eros's case had gone cold, the police were still looking for any possible leads. With the hat from the crime scene being their only piece of evidence, they decided to send it for DNA testing. With the help of DNA technology, the police found a suspect whose DNA matched the sample found on the hat, and this suspect was Gino McMahon. Crucial witnesses came forward, placing McMahon at the crime scene. Following an extensive investigation, the police identified 35-year-old Gino McMahon, a resident of Hartford, as a suspect in the case. He also lived on Winship Street, the same street where Eros was shot. On June 13, 2023, McMahon was apprehended and charged with the murder of Eros Diaz. Although the motive remained undisclosed, it was revealed that both Eros and McMahon were involved in the trade of illicit substances. According to the provided affidavit, the shooting took place on June 22, 2019, at approximately 9:30 p.m., resulting in injuries to both Eros Diaz and another individual named Xavier Lugo, who was 31 years old at the time. It was reported that the tragic incident had occurred on Winship Street following a car crash. It was revealed that Eros Diaz had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the head and was pronounced deceased at the scene. Xavier Lugo, found approximately a block away from where the shooting took place, had sustained multiple gunshot wounds and was initially listed in critical condition. McMahon's bail was set at $3 million. His appearance in Hartford Superior Court was scheduled for July 10, 2023. Catherine Diaz, the mother of Eros, expressed her gratitude and sense of relief upon learning about the arrest, stating that they had tirelessly worked and prayed for this day to come. She mentioned that they never lost hope that the person responsible for her son's death would be brought to justice. Catherine sincerely hoped that by apprehending the perpetrator, they could prevent other mothers from experiencing the profound loss of a child or a loved one. She also extended her gratitude to the many individuals within the criminal justice system who had devoted 4 years to the investigation, helping her family find some semblance of healing and closure. Nestled in Southern California, California City captures the essence of distinctive living with its stunning desert landscapes and expansive open spaces. Embracing an outdoor-oriented culture, residents indulge in activities like hiking, off-roading, and immersing themselves in the natural beauty that surrounds the city. Furthermore, California City generally maintains a lower crime rate compared to some larger metropolitan areas in the state. However, the community of California City was deeply bewildered and distressed when Desiree Thompson, a 30-year-old mother, disappeared without a trace on January 7, 2012. Desiree Thompson, born on September 23, 1981, grew up in California. Not much is known about her childhood. However, she got married in her late 20s and started her new life with her husband, Edward Gibson, on 68th Street in California City. Soon, the couple welcomed a daughter in 2008 and named her Nyara. Despite having to deal with complex family dynamics due to recurring conflicts and episodes of violence, they did their best to overcome their circumstances. On January 7, 2012, a huge argument between Desiree and her husband escalated rapidly, leading to abusive behavior from Gibson. Following the altercation on the morning of January 7, 2012, Desiree's mother, Sherry Smith, called her between 10 and 11 a.m. The two had a conversation, during which Desiree made the decision to spend the remainder of the day with friends. With emotions running high, Desiree made the decision to take some time away to cool off, leaving her 4-year-old daughter Nyara with her husband at home. Later that evening, around 8:30 p.m., Desiree contacted her mother from a friend's house and informed her that she was heading back to her apartment. Desiree assured her mother that she would call once she arrived safely. However, she never called. Once she was reported missing, the police swiftly responded to the situation and initiated an immediate search for Desiree Thompson. Despite their initial confidence and dedicated efforts, the search proved challenging and yielded no leads. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into years, the investigation gradually lost momentum and the case went cold. The case remained under the radar for a decade. However, the 10th anniversary of Desiree Thompson's disappearance brought renewed attention to the heartbreaking situation. Desiree's mother, Sherry, who had consistently shared posts about her daughter on Facebook, made another heartfelt plea for information.
She was just a beautiful person. I'm so frustrated with this case. I just want closure for my daughter. I want to bring my daughter home, and I want justice to be served, and I want everybody held accountable.
And on that fateful day of January 7, 2022, her persistence paid off as a breakthrough occurred. Miraculously, a new piece of information came to light, breathing new life into the investigation and rekindling hope for answers. Upon seeing Sherry's Facebook post, a man whose name was not made public felt compelled to respond, unsure if the information he had would be relevant to Desiree's case. However, he decided to reach out and share what he knew with Sherry. He revealed that years ago, a man had confided in him about committing a heinous act, killing a woman he had encountered by chance and burying her in his backyard. What caught his attention was that the description of the victim shared similarities with Desiree. Sherry was left in a state of shock upon hearing what was shared by the informant. Understanding the gravity of the details, the informant and his father promptly went to the police station to provide a statement and share what they knew. According to him, the man responsible for the heinous act was identified as 60-year-old Jose Lara. Upon discovering that Jose Lara had left his residence at 86th Street in California City years ago, the police faced the challenge of locating him. Recognizing the potential difficulties in apprehending Laura, they made the decision to first investigate his former residence in California City, where the informant had indicated that the woman resembling Desiree had been buried. Authorities arrived at Jose Lara's previous residence and employed a device designed to detect anomalies in the soil. Utilizing this technology, they carefully excavated the area of interest and, to their somber discovery, uncovered human remains. The authorities promptly initiated the process of DNA identification to confirm the identity of the recovered remains. And the results came back soon enough, confirming the heartbreaking truth. The remains indeed belonged to Desiree Thompson.
I believe it's my daughter. This is the first time that I literally feel this is her.
3 months after Desiree's remains were recovered, her mother Sherry was finally able to bring her daughter home in a shiny red urn. While it was a bittersweet moment, Sherry found solace and peace in the fact that her daughter was finally back. While the family was finally letting out 10 years of bottled up emotions, the search for the suspect Jose Lara intensified. And on March 25, 2022, approximately a month after the discovery of Desiree Thompson's remains, 60-year-old Jose Lara was apprehended by law enforcement and booked into the Kern County Jail. The California City police officers presented compelling evidence, alleging that Lara had committed the heinous act of smashing Desiree's head against a refrigerator and repeatedly stabbing her in 2012 at the 2300 block of 86th Street. However, the details regarding how the investigators acquired evidence related to the process of the murder was not disclosed to the public. The severity of the crime led to Lara being charged with first-degree murder. With the arrest and forthcoming trial, the wheels of justice began to turn, ensuring that Lara would be held accountable for his alleged actions. The trial was scheduled for June 2023. On June 16, 2023, Desiree's family, filled with grief and determination, gathered in a courtroom, united in the pursuit of justice. Some family members wore shirts bearing Desiree's picture, serving as a poignant reminder of the life that was tragically taken away. California City police officers, who had played a pivotal role in the investigation, were also present at the hearing in Kern County Superior Court, demonstrating their support for the family and the pursuit of justice. During the trial, Desiree's family members delivered victim impact statements, sharing their heartfelt emotions and the immense void left by her absence. Lara, the defendant, listened to these statements with the aid of an interpreter, who translated the words from English to Spanish. However, when confronted with the family's remarks, Lara denied any involvement in Desiree's murder, asserting that there was no evidence to support the accusations against him. In response to Lara's denial of any involvement in Desiree's murder, Superior Court Judge Michael G. Bush expressed that his denials fell on deaf ears. This statement from the judge elicited a reaction from Desiree's family members, who responded with laughter. During the trial, Deputy Public Defender Mark R. Stamper presented an alternative theory, arguing that it was not Jose Lara who killed Desiree Thompson, but rather her abusive husband. According to Stamper's argument, Desiree and her husband had engaged in a domestic dispute on the day she disappeared, and he emphasized that her husband had not been located by the police. But Christine Antonios, prosecuting the case, presented witnesses who came forward and recalled Lara confessing to the murder of Desiree while he was under the influence of alcohol. According to their testimonies, Lara's anger had escalated after being disrespected and subsequently ejected from a party in 2012. Lara, after being ejected, went home. However, he retraced his steps, returning to the vicinity with the intention of attacking one of the individuals who had insulted him and then removed him from the party. Subsequently, he trailed 2 individuals, suspecting that one of them was the person who had shown him disrespect. Failing to find the ones who verbally attacked him, Lara instead invited Desiree to his house for beers. Seeking an outlet for his rage, Lara allegedly targeted Desiree, taking his anger out on her for the events she was not even a part of. According to the reports presented during the trial, It was revealed that at some point in Laura's house, while Desiree leaned towards the refrigerator to retrieve a beer, Laura violently smashed her head into the refrigerator door. Additionally, the report stated that Laura proceeded to stab her multiple times. It came as a shock to Desiree's family, as a person who was a complete stranger had ended Desiree's life. Jennifer Streeter, Desiree's aunt, expressed the immense pain and anguish caused by the graphic testimony and accompanying photos presented during the trial. With the presentation of compelling evidence and witness testimonies throughout the trial, the case finally reached its long-awaited closure. On June 16, 2023, 15-year-old Niara Thompson, the daughter of Desiree, witnessed the sentencing of her mother's murderer. As the verdict was read, tears streamed down Niara's face, marking the first time she had openly expressed her emotions since her mother's tragic death, 11 years prior. 61-year-old Laura was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole.
25 years for a 62-year-old man is a long time, and he will never see the light of day.
On the stand, Sherry bravely shared her revelation that until recently she had believed that her daughter's husband, Edward Gibson, was responsible for Desiree's death. However, Sherry stated that she now knew the truth and who the real culprit was. In 1984, Bradenton, Florida was a busy city located on the Gulf Coast. Like any city, it faced its fair share of challenges. The rapid growth and development in the area brought both opportunities and the need for careful urban planning. But the challenges in our victim's life were quite different. Cynthia Ruth Wood, a 33-year-old mother of 3 children, lived in Bradenton, Florida in 1984. At that time, she worked as a manager at the Cape Vista Child Care Center in Bradenton. Cynthia was going through a divorce with her husband, Barry Wood, and they were in a custody battle for their 2 children together, in addition to her 1 son from a previous marriage. Cynthia had accused Barry of physically abusing her and her son from her previous marriage. During her work at the child care center, she met a man named Charles Michael Stevens, who came to pick up his girlfriend Pamela Kincaid's children. On June 5, 1984, Stevens contacted Cynthia and claimed to have information that could help her in the custody case against Barry. He asked her out on a date the next day, and they planned to meet at her house. Neighbors reported seeing Cynthia leaving her apartment with Steven on June 6th, but that was the last time she was seen alive. 3 days later, on June 9th, Cynthia's body was discovered in a water-filled ditch in Riverview, Florida, by a woman named Susan Thurlow. The autopsy revealed that she had been strangled, and fingerprints were clearly found on her body. The police knew that Cynthia was last seen with Stevens, but when checked, the fingerprints on Cynthia's body matched a man already known to the police named Donald Michael Santini. Santini already had a history of trouble with the law, starting in 1978 when he was convicted of assaulting a woman while serving in the U.S. Army in Germany. He also faced charges of aggravated robbery in Texas in 1983, to which he had confessed before disappearing while out on bail. When police looked deeper into who Charles Michael Stevens was, they were shocked to learn that Stevens was none other than Santini himself. Santini had used the alias of Stevens to escape after his crimes in Texas. Investigators issued an arrest warrant for Santini, but he was nowhere to be found. 6 days after Cynthia's body was found, Pamela Lynn Kincaid came forward. She revealed that Charles Michael Stevens, the alias used by Santini, had confessed to taking Cynthia's life on June 6, 1984, before he disappeared. Santini had befriended Pamela and had been living with her before meeting Cynthia. Investigators now had strong evidence, including Santini's fingerprints on Cynthia's neck, witness statements from Pamela, and the connection to the child care center. Despite their efforts, investigators could not locate Santini because he had already fled, and at that time he was using an alias. Gradually, the case went cold. In June 2023, nearly 40 years after the incident, a surprising twist emerged. The Florida Caribbean Regional Fugitive Task Force received a tip leading the U.S. Marshals to Campbell, located in San Diego County, California. There, they successfully apprehended 65-year-old Donald Michael Santini, who was known locally as Wellman Simmons. Donald Santini served on various community boards and was involved in local organizations, including the Campbell Lake Marina Community Planning Group and the Lake Marina Views Mutual Water Company. His arrest surprised many residents, as he appeared to be an ordinary individual in the community. According to Billy Joe Janin, the chair of the planning group, on June 7, 2023, Santini was arrested. Prior to this, Santini had been wanted by authorities in Galveston County, Texas, for robbing a convenience store clerk at knife point in May 1983. Despite providing some evidence and returning a portion of the stolen money, Santini fled Texas while out on bond. Investigators had tracked him down based on the license plate number provided by the victim. It was believed that Santini made his way to Florida by June 1984, where he strangled Cynthia to death and fled the place. After fleeing Florida, Santini managed to elude law enforcement for nearly 4 decades. The extensive search for him took investigators to different locations, including Texas, California, and even Thailand. His profile was featured on the television show America's Most Wanted multiple times in 1990, 2005, and 2013. Santini himself admitted to a Hillsborough County detective in early June 2023, when he was apprehended for identity fraud in California, that he had seen stories about himself on the show. He revealed that he had been using aliases to evade authorities in 2 states for almost 4 decades, only ceasing the use of fake driver's licenses once he became aware of facial recognition technology. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office issued a statement acknowledging the arrest and dispatching detectives to interview Santini while awaiting his extradition. At the time of his arrest in June 2023, Santini had used 13 different aliases, including Donald Chapman and John Trimlion. During his extradition hearing, the judge engaged in a conversation with Santini to confirm his identity and his status as a wanted individual from Florida. Santini acknowledged his identity and expressed concern for his safety due to the victim's family, prompting the public defender to advise him to remain silent. Santini is currently being held without bail. On July 6, 2023, Santini was seen crying in the courthouse just moments before he was denied bond. Clarksville has been recognized as one of the best places to live in Tennessee. But apart from all the good the city has to offer, one of the most shocking crimes took place here in early 2010. In 2010, an old married couple, 82-year-old William Bill Campbell and 81-year-old Ina Campbell, were living a peaceful life with their dogs in their Jackson Road home in Clarksville, Tennessee. Bill would always get up early in the morning, grab his newspaper, and drink his coffee. As they were already in the latter stages of their lives, both Bill and Ina were facing medical issues and were surviving on oxygen cylinders. But the couple was still doing considerably well. Sadly, all that changed on January 29, 2010, when officers from Clarksville Police Department responded to a 911 call, which directed them to Bill and Ina's home on 201 Jackson Road. Daniel Champagne, one of Bill and Ina's neighbors, had decided to check on the old couple, as there was a snowstorm in the area. Although Bill and Ina had an adopted son named William Roger Campbell, Daniel too was like a son to them. As Roger wasn't living with Bill and Ina at the time, Daniel wanted to make sure that they were fine during this spell of bad weather and see if they needed anything. But when he walked into the Campbell home, his eyes met a gruesome sight. Daniel discovered Bill and Ina's bodies lying cold and covered in blood on their bed. Daniel pulled himself together after making the horrific discovery and made a call to inform the authorities. When the detectives arrived at the crime scene, they noted that Bill and Ina had been shot once each in the head. A thorough search of the house uncovered some intriguing details. The door window had been broken, and the home appeared ransacked. The drawers had been torn out, and the kitchen cabinets were all open. The time of the couple's death was estimated to be around 6:20 a.m. Clarksville Police Detective Tim Anderson and Clarksville Police Sergeant Timothy Finley were assigned to work on the case. Roger, too, was informed of the terrible incident that had taken place. Sergeant Finley believed the killer was someone who knew the Campbells. To gain more information, he questioned the neighbors first, who said that Bill and Ina's dogs would have barked and woken them up if a stranger had entered their home. The heinous act left Daniel in turmoil. He still seemed to be in denial, and was always asking how somebody could do something so terrible and walk away.
Must have some regret. If they got a conscience, it's got to be bothering. It's like the sunflower. Like I said, they were my second mom and dad. Somebody do something like that and then just walk away and never think about it.
Frederick McClintock, a CPD drug agent and crime scene investigator in 2010, said that during their detailed search of the crime scene, he found a bottle of palm olive dish soap with a red-brown material on the back that appeared to be blood. In a field test swab, the material tested positive for blood. The upstairs bathroom sink drain also tested positive for blood. 2 .25 caliber shell casings were found in the victim's rooms. Both casings were matched to the same firearm, but only one matched a box of ammunition found at the crime scene that belonged to Bill Campbell. Scott Bobian, a training officer and a member of the crime scene unit with the CPD at the time, recalled being a foul odor in the house. He said that Bill and Ina were both still lying in their beds, covered in their blankets, with their oxygen tubes on. The officers who entered the house recalled the inside being warm. Agent Frederick further testified that the temperature in the home was 79 degrees, and in the basement a gas log heater was on, additionally keeping the house warm. Dr. Amy Hayes, who worked at the Davidson County Medical Examiner's Office, performed the autopsies on Bill and Ina's bodies on January 31, 2010. She said victims both had early to moderate levels of decomposition, which could have been advanced by the heat in the home. Later, the blood found on the soap was identified through DNA testing to be Roger Campbell's. After taking a deep look at his life, the detective considered Roger Campbell a person of interest in the case, as he would have benefited financially from his parents' death, but no solid evidence indicated his involvement in the heinous crime. Investigators needed a fresh clue that could lead them to the killer, but nothing of importance ever turned up, and Bill and Ina's case slowly went cold. The slayings remained a cold case for over a decade, until Roger Campbell was arrested 11 years later. Deputies with the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office in Georgia arrested William Roger Campbell at his home on June 21, 2021. Roger was 64 at the time. Even though there was no new evidence in the case, the authorities made the arrest based on their older findings in the case. Roger said that he was innocent and told the detectives he had left his parents' home at 7 a.m. on January 28, 2010, and they were still in their nightgown and pajamas when he left. On Saturday evening, July 10, 2021, Roger was extradited to Clarksville and booked in the Montgomery County Jail after being charged with his adoptive parents' 2010 double murder. During Roger's trial in January 2023, when he was 66, Assistant District Attorney Miriam Bell and Assistant District Attorney Crystal Morgan told the jury that the state had to prove 3 specific actions in order to find Roger guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. 1, they had to prove it was Roger who did it. 2, they had to prove malice. And lastly, they had to prove that Roger acted with a justifiable reason. The witnesses in the trial for William Roger Campbell, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of his elderly adoptive parents, ranged from police detectives to a clock specialist. Clarksville Police Detective Tim Anderson, the lead detective of the case at the time, told the court that despite the scene appearing burglarized, the couple's valuables were still in place. Jewelry boxes appeared undisturbed. Lock boxes had not been tampered with. Approximately $2,800 was still there. Checks remained on the dining room table. And most shockingly, the guns were all there. He further justified his statement by adding that guns were the first things that would get stolen during a burglary. The only disruption appeared to be that drawers and cabinets throughout the house had been pulled out haphazardly. Roger's 35-year-old son, William Sean Campbell, described having a close relationship with his late grandparents. Sean told the courtroom that he had only seen his father, Roger Campbell, a handful of times growing up. He added that after the funerals of Bill and Ina, Sean was made aware of an estate auction that took place at the Campbell's residence, and Sean was never contacted by his father to keep any of his grandparents' items as keepsakes. Bill's estate was worth over $130,000, and his wife Ina's estate worth was over $120,000. Altogether, their sole heir, Roger Campbell, received over $180,000 from his parents' estate. Roger's ex-wife and Sean's mother, 70-year-old Linda Campbell, also testified. On January 26, 2010, 3 days before the bodies were found, Linda was paged to Register 17, where she was startled to see Roger with his mother, Ina. Before then, she hadn't seen or spoken to him in almost 13 years. Roger struck up a conversation with her and told her he was in town visiting and would be leaving on the 28th of the same month. Linda found the whole situation quite odd, as she had never been paged by Ina, Bill, or Roger before then. Bill and Ina Campbell owned an antique Lenzkirch grandfather clock, and according to Andrew Smith, the clock expert, it was extremely rare. Andrew held a degree in horology, which was the study and measurement of time. He had serviced the Campbell's grandfather clock for many years, visiting the home to perform maintenance annually. When he first laid eyes on the clock, he offered Bill $5,000 for it. Andrew recalled that Roger, too, was present when he made that offer to Bill. But Bill turned him down, saying he knew the clock was a rare antique and he wasn't willing to part with it. And in February 2010, less than a month after Bill and Ina's murders, Andrew received a call asking if he was interested in buying a Lenzkirch grandfather clock. He scheduled to meet and look at the clock after being given directions to the location. Andrew was excited that he was finally going to be able to buy the clock he cherished for so long. But when he arrived at the Campbell residence, instead of Bill and Ina, he was met by Roger. As Andrew was unaware of Bill and Ina's murders, he asked Roger where his parents were. Roger became nervous and shaky before breaking the news to Andrew. Andrew immediately tried to stop the transaction, but Roger insisted that he was the sole heir and that he was able to handle the estate. When Andrew decided to follow through with the transaction, he claimed that Roger tried to haggle by asking for $6,000. However, Andrew ended up paying the original $5,000 and left with the clock. The clock still remained in his possession. The defense took a different stance. Defense attorney Joseph Allen Price told the jury that the decision that Roger murdered his parents had been made all those years ago, when the crime actually took place. He raised the question that why wasn't Roger charged back then, and why was he being charged now, since all the evidence that was presented in the court was already present back in 2010. Price reassured the jury that there was no new evidence, no new witnesses, and no new confessions. All evidence to be presented during the trial was collected in 2010. Even the blood found in the bathroom sink was too degraded to find any DNA. They argued that all the state had provided was more doubt and nothing else. On Monday, January 23, 2023, the state led a compelling closing argument with comments from Marion Bell and Crystal Morgan, the assistant district attorneys. They stated that Roger needed money, his parents weren't dying fast enough, and that's why he killed them, while they slept in their own beds. After listening to both sides and deliberating for over 4 hours, the trial of William Roger Campbell ended with a guilty verdict from the judge Robert T. Bateman. Daniel was finally at peace that Bill and Ina's killer was going to pay for his crimes. Lake Charles is the 5th largest incorporated city in the U.S. state of Louisiana. This city is known as the festival capital of Louisiana due to hosting more than 100 festivals and carnivals. Apart from being known for gambling, blues music, and excellent cuisine, the town serves as a major educational center for the southwest portion of Louisiana. However, the crime rate in Lake Charles is significantly higher than the average for the United States, making it one of the most unsafe places in the country. And in early 2000, one of the most horrifying crimes took place here. Alan Gerard Babineaux was born on September 27, 1972. He grew up with his 4 sisters, Karen, Deidre, Vanessa, and Raquel. And during his childhood, Alan was always known as the goofy sibling who always kept troubling them. By the time Alan was an adult, he had grown into a person of love and laughter who cared deeply for all his sisters. Alan was a barber who owned his own business, and according to his family, he kept to himself and never made an enemy. Karen, Alan's oldest sister, said he was his father's best friend, and they were all very proud of him. On the night of December 31st, 1999, Alan was out enjoying a New Year's Eve party with his friends. But what was supposed to be a night of celebration turned deadly at a nightclub called Dollhouse, where Alan was bringing in the new year. In the early hours of January 1st, 2000, tragedy struck. In a shooting at the Dollhouse nightclub on Mill Street, 3 people were hit. The victims were identified as 27-year-old Alan, 24-year-old LaShonda Harmon, and 24-year-old Shonda Woods. However, LaShonda and Shonda were only wounded and survived their injuries. But that wasn't the case for Alan, who succumbed to his injuries around 3:45 a.m. on January 1st, 2000. Karen, Alan's sister, received a call from someone who informed them that Alan had been shot and was being taken to a hospital. When Alan's family got to the hospital, they still didn't know if all of this was real, but everything became clear when they saw Alan's injured body. The Calcasieu Parish Violent Crimes Task Force was informed of the incident, and the officers rushed to the crime scene. While investigating the scene, the detectives found shell casings scattered in the parking lot, and a bag of .40 caliber rounds was found in the limousine Alan and his friends were riding in that night. Like any New Year's bash, there were dozens of people at the party, yet everyone who was questioned claimed they didn't see anything. After an initial round of questioning, Deputy Chief Mark Krause was still not sure whether the shooting was an accident or a targeted attack. Karen found it hard to believe that nobody saw a thing with such a huge crowd present at the club. With a heavy heart, Alan's family laid him to rest at the Sacred Heart Cemetery, Lake Charles, Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, USA. The investigation into Alan's death proceeded as normal, but nothing led the detectives to his killer. Months passed, but there still were no new developments made in Alan's case, and eventually, with no leads to follow, the investigation lost its pace and the case went cold. However, the cold case was reopened in January 2022, when the Calcasieu Parish District Attorney's Office advised Lake Charles Police Department to review all case files and evidence.
In January of 2022, to be contacted by the Calcasieu Parish District Attorney's Office about reopening this case. I'm just glad I could be a part of this investigation along with Sergeant Detective Willie Fontenot, Major Kevin Kirkham, and Crime Scene Tech Christian Hall. And it just didn't stop with the investigators here at this office. Starting off with this cold case, independently, we all reviewed documents, reviewed statements, everybody independently before we came back collectively. And then once we came back collectively, this was a collaborative effort. We had time with the Southwest Louisiana Crime Lab. We had time with the Calcasieu Parish Coroner's Office, having meetings after meetings. The dollhouse establishment in the 2500 block of Mill Street is still, the building is still there. We went back out, reconstruction of the crime scene.
Alan's family was informed of the new investigation and hoped that maybe a fresh set of eyes on the case will turn up new leads. All they wanted was closure and justice for Alan. At this time, LCPD was handling Alan's case. They revisited the crime scene and reconstructed the incident at the Dollhouse nightclub.
On January of 2000, I was a patrol officer here at the Lake Charles City Police and happened to arrive on scene that night. One of the first officers, I did the initial report of how chaotic this scene was. 3 people that suffered gunshot wounds. LaShonda Woods, Shonda Harmon, and also Alan Babineaux. Later that night, that morning, approximately 3:45 a.m., Alan Babineaux succumbed to his injuries at a local hospital. Tragic situation. The Babineaux family was struck real hard about this of Alan. He had sisters and he was the only kid. His father grieved a whole year. In 2001, the next year, his father deceased.
Deputy Chief Franklin Fondell, who was now working on the new investigation, spoke to some of Alan's family members. They helped the police department as much as they could. A fresh look at Alan's case, which involved video statements, speaking to witnesses, and also forensics and new technology, led the detectives to obtain 2 arrest warrants in January 2023.
And in January of 2023, we were able to obtain 2 arrest warrants that were signed by Judge Tony Fazio. The first arrest warrant was for Marvin Carr. We traveled to Douglasville, Georgia, and on January, after receiving all this information, 31st, we traveled. February the 1st, Marvin Carr was taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals Task Force, along with Douglas County Sheriff's Office. We traveled back to the Lake Charles, Louisiana area, and on Friday, February the 3rd, Terrence Lee Malvo was arrested in Sulphur, Louisiana area, approximately 5:15 a.m.
The renewed investigation helped detectives identify the 2 suspects as 46-year-old Marvin Dondre Kyer and 49-year-old Terrence Lee Malvo. The nature of the evidence that helped police identify the 2 men was never released to the public. Marvin was arrested on February 1, 2023, in Douglasville, Georgia, on 1 count of principal to second-degree murder, and Terrence Malvo was arrested in the morning hours of February 3, 2023, on 1 count of second-degree murder. Bond for both men was set at $1 million. Investigators believed that multiple altercations took place inside the nightclub before being taken outside into the parking lot, where Marvin and Terrence began to fire rounds into the crowd. The worst part was that Alan was only an innocent bystander. Fondell was happy he could help bring closure to Alan's family, even though it was after 23 years of their suffering. Alton, Illinois is a historic city nestled along the Mississippi River, renowned for its rich heritage and unique charm. As one of the oldest towns in the state, Alton boasts a captivating blend of preserved architecture and modern amenities. However, it is important to acknowledge that, like any other community, Alton faces challenges in terms of crime. The rate of violent crime in Alton is just slightly below the national average, which makes Alton not a stranger to heinous crimes. Despite efforts to combat crime and ensure public safety, notable cases of heinous acts have occurred in the city, such as the one that unfolded on August 15, 2014. On that fateful day, a group of teenagers were enjoying their time on Seminary Street in Alton, unaware of the disturbing turn events would take. Their innocent playtime took a drastic shift when they stumbled upon something truly horrifying. A car seemingly abandoned had been left parked near the play area. Intrigued, they cautiously approached the vehicle and peered inside, only to be confronted with a shocking sight. In the back seat of the car lay a decomposed body, partially covered, sending chills down their spines. A call was immediately made to 911. Upon receiving the urgent call, the Alton Police Department swiftly dispatched officers to the reported address at 2142 Seminary Road. Within minutes, officers arrived at the scene and began to investigate the unsettling situation. At the location, they discovered an abandoned vehicle situated within an open-air carport, which was connected to an enclosed garage on the northwest corner of the property. Disturbingly, upon closer inspection, the officers observed what appeared to be extensively decomposed human remains in both the rear seat and trunk of the vehicle. Startled residents shared that the vehicle had been present in that spot for several years, heightening the mystery surrounding the disturbing find. In response to the advanced state of decomposition of the suspected human remains, Dr. Lindsay Trammell, a forensic investigator and anthropologist from the St. Louis County, Missouri office of the medical examiner, was summoned to the scene. Dr. Trammell collaborated with the Alton Police Department and the Madison County Coroner's Office to aid in the investigation. Working alongside forensic pathologist Dr. Raj Nanduri and utilizing her expertise in forensic anthropology, Dr. Trammell played a vital role in determining the cause of death, which was classified as homicidal violence. From 2014 to mid-2018, Detective Joe Splittorff of the Alton Police Department diligently pursued various leads pertaining to the case, but with the body having been there for so long and no viable evidence to follow up on, the case quickly began to grow cold. Detective Splittorff focused extensively on identifying the victim, employing a range of methods, including extensive DNA collection and testing. Through the meticulous efforts of the investigation and the results of DNA analysis, the remains recovered from the trunk and back seat were found to be from the same victim, who was positively identified as Jose Randolfo Pagoada, a Honduran national who was 52 at the time of his death.
He was just here, like many others, trying to make a better life for his family.
The estimated time of death was believed to be 4 years prior in December 2010. After an extensive investigation, authorities uncovered that Jose had been reported missing in December 2010, which was a significant breakthrough in the case. As a result, the police narrowed their focus to a specific suspect, although the details of the investigation were not publicly disclosed. However, the authorities had a high level of confidence in their assessment of this individual. The suspect was identified as 51-year-old Odilion Vigaran Gudino, a Mexican male who was residing in the United States illegally at the time of Jose's murder.
He is a Mexican-born national. He was also here in the United States working as a carpenter by trade. And he was actually living at the same house as the victim in Washington Park, so that was kind of their connection to one another.
Unfortunately, despite the police's strong belief in their investigation against Gudino, they discovered that he had already departed for Mexico shortly after the murder took place. This development posed a significant challenge for the authorities, as Gudino's departure made it more difficult to apprehend him and bring him to justice. On July 26, 2018, the Madison County State's Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant for Odilion Vigaran Gudino. The charges against him included 3 counts of first-degree murder, along with charges of armed robbery and concealment of homicidal death. These charges were related to the stabbing death of Jose Randolfo Pagoada, in Alton on December 1, 2010. However, on August 1, 2008, amended charges were filed. Amended charges are the charges that have been modified from its unique structure. However, the details of these charges remain sealed until further progress was made in the arrest process. In April 2021, the United States Department of Justice Office of International Affairs, in collaboration with the Alton Police Department, pursued and successfully obtained a provisional arrest warrant to apprehend Odion Vergara Guadino in Mexico.
With him being international, it was almost impossible. There's a lot of red tape involved with when you're dealing with another country.
This warrant authorized Guadino's arrest in Cuernavaca, Morelos, Mexico. In April 2021, Guadino was finally apprehended in Cuernavaca. Following his arrest, he was held in custody in Mexico, awaiting extradition proceedings prior to his transfer to the United States. 2 years later, on May 16, 2023, custody of 56-year-old Odion Vergara Guadino was transferred from Mexican authorities to U.S. authorities. Following the transfer, Guadino was flown to the United States and subsequently transported to the Alton City Jail on the same day.
Seeing him walk through the doors of our jail for the first time was almost like seeing a ghost, or seeing this unicorn that we had all talked about for this long period of time. But then all of a sudden he was here.
Following Vergara Guadino's return, the investigation revealed crucial information indicating that the fatal stabbing actually occurred in St. Clair County rather than Madison County. Recognizing this jurisdictional shift, Madison County prosecutors promptly notified St. Clair County State's Attorney Jim Gomerick about the case. As a result, it will be the St. Clair County State's Attorney's Office that will take the responsibility of prosecuting Vergara Guadino for the murder charges. Madison County Associate Judge Ronald Selmer included an order on June 8, 2023, transferring custody of Odion Vergara Guadino from Madison County to St. Clair County. As of June 9, 2023, Vergara Guadino remains in custody, and the legal process is progressing with the appropriate jurisdiction now being St. Clair County, where the murder charges against him will be prosecuted. Manly is a picturesque beachside suburb of Sydney, offering an attractive living environment. The community in Manly is known for its active and diverse nature, attracting a range of residents including young females, professionals, and travelers. However, despite its overall appeal, Manly has had its share of dark moments. In the 1980s, the suburb became a hotbed for incidents of violence against gay men, and among the victims was 27-year-old Scott Johnson. Born on November 27, 1961, in Los Angeles County, California, to the family of Grant Allen Johnson and Barbara Lee Anderson, Scott Russell Johnson was the second child. He grew up with his loving brother Steve Johnson and sister Terry Johnson. Scott discovered his identity as gay at a young age, but decided to keep it secret as during that time, LGBT rights were not legally recognized. Despite societal challenges and stigma, he remained steadfast in living life as he wished, but secretly. At 22, he embarked on a journey to study mathematics at the University of Cambridge in England, where he met Michael Noon, an Australian musicologist and the love of his life.
One night, he was trying to tell me about a relationship that he had, and he said, "It's not a girl." I was shocked. I was shocked when this person that I felt like I knew better than anybody else and was closer to than anybody else, I didn't know this about him. I didn't know that he was gay.
Although he initially returned to the U.S. to pursue a doctorate at the University of California in Berkeley, Scott's firm belief in his deep connection with Michael led him to leave his doctoral program and relocate to Canberra, Australia. There he pursued his PhD at Macquarie University, embracing both his academic aspirations and his love for Michael. Despite the lack of openness towards the LGBT community in Australia during the 1980s, he quickly adapted to his new environment and became an integral part of the gay community, finding happiness and fulfillment. However, little did Scott know that his life was about to take a dramatic turn. Scott's tragic fate unfolded on December 10, 1988, when his lifeless, naked body was found on the rocks at Bluefish Point, near Manly, New South Wales, just a small ferry ride from Sydney. This shocking discovery occurred merely 2 years into his new life in Australia. Curiously, Scott's clothes and belongings were located on the top of the cliff.
The photos were very distressing. His body was torn, it was battered. The expression on his face, it was just terrifying. And it really did look like he was pleading for help.
Despite the investigations commencing promptly, the prevailing assumption that he took his own life hindered a thorough examination of the case, leaving many questions unanswered.
It was clear when I got to the police station, the Manly police station, that the police already assumed it was a suicide. And I said, impossible.
Steve, Scott's devoted brother, steadfastly believed that his brother did not take his own life, and so his death must have been a result of foul play.
By the time I got here, about 36 hours later, the police had decided that it was a suicide.
Though Steve strongly disputed this, the police at the time were unwilling to look into the matter further. With the case not being ruled a homicide, there was no further investigation at the time. However, Steve remained determined, and for years that followed, he campaigned for police to reopen the investigation and look into it as a homicide. In May 2007, Steve traveled to Sydney to meet Sergeant Steve Page, a former detective who had overseen investigations into clifftop murders. These incidents occurred on the opposite side of the harbor, where Steve's brother had tragically died. Notably, all the victims were part of the gay community, and the murder locations were known meeting spots for discreet gatherings. These murders were characterized by a lack of clear motives, suggesting that they were driven solely by hatred towards gay men.
There were many men who were killed for sport. It was just a blood sport.
Despite facing resistance, Steve continued to tirelessly campaign in the hopes of drawing attention to the case. In 2012, and again in 2015, he sought the assistance from the coroner's office, hoping to shed light on the truth.
I didn't know whether someone had pushed him. I didn't know whether he had slipped. I didn't know why we lost Scott.
Regrettably, Steve's unwavering efforts and appeals did not produce the desired outcome, even though the coroner's office recommended that police reopen the case in 2012 and 2015. The police did not act on this, leaving the case unresolved and the justice he sought for his brother still elusive. Steve was heartbroken, as he was not able to provide justice to his loving brother.
Basically, I got stonewalled, no answers.
Steve soon reached out to Daniel Glick, who was an investigative journalist.
How'd you like to work for me getting this case investigated and finding my brother's killer?
I said, listen, if I think that your brother killed himself, I'm going to tell you that. And the second thing I said was, if I think he was killed, I will investigate it as if it was my own brother that was killed.
As hopes gradually dwindled for the Johnson family, they felt a sense of helplessness. However, a glimmer of hope emerged when a coroner began considering the possibility that Scott's case might be a homicide. In 2017, had only recently been decriminalized in South Wales, violence against the LGBT community before that was unfortunately common, but often overlooked by investigators. The revelation that Scott Johnson was gay took the case in a new direction, prompting a reevaluation of circumstances surrounding his death. The revelation that Scott's death might have been a hate crime shed light on the series of other homophobic attacks and killings that occurred in the 1980s around Sydney beaches. Disturbingly, it is now believed that as many as 80 gay men were victims of these crimes, with a significant number being pushed off cliffs.
I found a whole slew of articles that really looked a lot like assaults on gay men. There were these roving gangs. They were young kids. Some were 15, 16, 17, early 20s. And they would meet up and it was sport for them to go out and bash poofters.
To better comprehend Scott Johnson's death, the detectives attempted to simulate the situation using a dummy. They repeatedly pushed the dummy off the cliff where the tragic incident occurred. After multiple tries, they finally gained a clearer insight. Scott's demise might have been a result of a hate crime. In 2017, after much persistence and consideration of the violence against gay men in the area, the case was finally reopened. However, investigating a 29-year-old case that was previously closed posed significant challenges. The search for evidence commenced, and the police slowly began to uncover a few leads. Despite the passage of time, their diligent efforts aimed to shed light on the truth and bring justice to Scott's untimely death. On May 12, 2020, 3 years after the case was reopened, the police made a significant breakthrough by arresting a 49-year-old man named Scott White in Lane Cove. White was charged with the 1988 murder of Scott Johnson.
The door opens on a new homophobic chapter in Australian history. And out comes Scott White, charged with murdering Scott Johnson 32 years ago.
What evidence led them to White was never released to the public. The police conducted extensive interviews to uncover the truth about what had transpired on that fateful night. According to Scott White's account, he and Scott Johnson met at a hotel on December 10, 1988, and decided to take a walk around North Head, a known location for gay encounters at the time. However, during their walk, a heated argument erupted between them. In the midst of the altercation, White, who was 18 years old at the time, threw a punch at Scott, resulting in him staggering backwards and tragically falling to his death over the cliff. Scott White originally pleaded not guilty, but changed his plea deal to guilty on January 10, 2022. 3 days after, he was found guilty of murdering Scott Johnson in 1988. The following day, White's lawyer attempted to withdraw the guilty plea, citing White's supposed unfitness to make the admission. However, the Supreme Court rejected the motion, affirming White's guilty plea.
I was watching the reactions of police as they were leaving the court, and for some of them, you could see it was disbelief.
On May 3, 2022, Scott White was sentenced to 12 years and 7 months in prison, with a non-parole period of 8 years and 3 months. The sentence was based on the laws applicable at the time of the murder. However, shortly after White maintained he did not intend to kill Dr. Johnson, and his legal team successfully argued the plea was made when he was confused and stressed. That had the first conviction thrown out. In the overturned judgment on the murder conviction, Justin Helen Wilson concluded that while the case had previously been considered a potential gay hate crime, there was insufficient evidence to establish that the attack was motivated by Scott's identity. Additionally, Scott White's diagnosis of early-onset dementia, attributed to the excessive alcohol abuse, further complicated the progression of the case, which meant that many unanswered questions regarding the circumstances of Scott's death, the reasons behind it, and the exact events that transpired may never be definitively answered. Nonetheless, the legal proceedings continued despite the challenges and uncertainties surrounding the case. A new trial commenced, and on June 8, 2023, a judge at the New South Wales Supreme Court sentenced 52-year-old Scott White to 9 years in prison, 6 years without parole, saying he had left Dr. Johnson to die. According to Steve Johnson, the older brother of Scott Johnson, the family's sympathy towards Scott White diminished after he withdrew his confession to murder. Steve Johnson expressed disappointment or disillusionment with White's actions, highlighting the impact it had on the family's perception of him. In a victim impact statement read out in court, Steve Johnson expressed that he and his wife, Rosemary, initially felt some compassion towards Scott White due to his generous plea. However, Steve Johnson stated that his sympathy for White had completely dissipated. After the case was finally closed, Steve Johnson expressed gratitude at its conclusion and said the family had worked for many years to reach this point.
I'm frustrated and dismayed that it took 12 years to finally get a ruling that Scott was killed. We all will go out and celebrate tonight. It's been many years working together on this.
Ignacio is a small town located in La Plata County in the southwestern part of Colorado. With a population of around 700 residents, it was here that our victim's tale would start on December 31st, 2009, when 49-year-old Larry Fuller celebrated New Year's Eve in this beautiful place. Larry Fuller was born on February 1st, 1959, in Socorro, New Mexico. He was the son of Dulcian Aragon and Lester Fuller. Larry completed his education at a high school in Socorro and later enlisted in the Army. In 2000, Larry relocated to Colorado, where he pursued a career as a diesel mechanic. He found employment at C&J Gravel Company, a company he often regarded as the best workplace. Known for his passion for dancing, fishing, camping, and cherishing moments with loved ones, Larry embraced life's joys. In 2009, Larry Fuller, a 49-year-old diesel mechanic, resided in Ignacio, Colorado. He shared his life with his wife, Paula Silva, and their 4 children. They had 3 daughters, Lori, Adrian, and Ashley Fuller, and 1 son, Stephen Fuller. Larry also had 3 stepchildren, who were Paula's from her previous relationship. On December 31st, 2009, Larry and Paula decided to welcome the new year by visiting the Sidekick Bar at 677 Goddard Avenue. As the evening came to a close, Larry and Paula started their journey home. Tragically, during their walk, a car came close to Larry and Paula. An unidentified assailant got down from the car and shot Larry. He then went inside the car again and drove away swiftly. The incident occurred within the first 2 hours of the new year, and Larry succumbed to his injuries at the scene. By then, Paula had already called the police. She was not harmed. Upon investigation, it was determined that the Fuller's tragic demise was caused by a single gunshot wound to the face. Detectives discovered a spent 9mm cartridge at the scene, yet the available evidence was limited beyond that. Initially, investigators speculated that the motive behind the crime may have stemmed from an altercation at the bar. However, Paula informed them that she and Larry had remained uninvolved in any conflicts that night. Unfortunately, with limited leads, the case quickly grew cold. On January 17, 2009, Larry Fuller was buried at St. Ignatius Cemetery in Colorado. Then, surprisingly, in 2013, a twist emerged from the somber graves of this cold case. Angel Garcia, a resident of Phoenix, contacted authorities in 2013. Overwhelmed by guilt and fear, Garcia disclosed to investigators that he had been in Ignacio with a person named David Hendren on the night Larry was tragically killed. According to Garcia's account, he, Hedren, and Hedren's brother, Hosteen Hedren, were present at the bar when Larry and his wife had been celebrating the new year. Hosteen Hedren had engaged in a physical altercation with another individual named Bo Watts at the bar. Remarkably, investigators later confirmed that Watts' appearance and hairstyle bore a resemblance to Larry's. Subsequently, at Hedren's behest, Garcia drove along Goddard Avenue, while Hendren followed Larry. Garcia then witnessed the chilling scene as Hendren approached Larry and fatally shot him at close range in the head. Immediately following the incident, Hedren swiftly entered Garcia's truck, and the two swiftly fled from the scene, leaving Paula unharmed. As per Garcia's statement to the Ignacio police and CBI investigators, Hendren discarded the handgun he used into a snowbank from the moving vehicle. However, the investigators could not find the murder weapon. Garcia positively identified Hendren during a police lineup conducted during his initial interview. Nevertheless, after Garcia's revelation in 2013, the case again went cold because the investigators could not find any evidence against Hedren besides Garcia's statements, and the murder weapon also could not be found. When asked about this matter, Ignacio Police Sergeant Wes Kroom, who represented the lead investigatory agency in 2013, referred inquiries to the CBI. However, a CBI spokeswoman declined to comment, citing the agency's policy of not discussing open cases. The heartbreaking reality was that Paula Silva passed away in 2015 without ever discovering who was responsible for her husband's untimely death. Then on February 3, 2023, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation assumed the role of the lead investigatory agency. Agent Brandon Ludwig took charge and gathered evidence through interviews with multiple individuals present at the Sidekick Bar on the night of Fuller's tragic death. By combining information from Fuller's family members and other law enforcement officers who responded to a disturbance at the bar that night, Ludwig could construct a comprehensive narrative. Ludwig's affidavit stated, "It is believed that David Hendren followed Fuller out of the bar, being under the impression he was the person who had assaulted his brother Hosteen. Hosteen fought with Bo Watts inside the bar, who shared the same physical traits as Fuller. It is believed that David Hendren killed Larry Fuller during a case of mistaken identity." Furthermore, Ludwig concluded that Garcia's statements contained details that only someone present at the scene of the night of Fuller's murder would know, including the location of the gunshot and the number of shots fired. Their persistence paid off. On May 18, 2023, a significant breakthrough occurred. David Hendren, now 38 years old, was apprehended at the Navajo Nation in Arizona. Subsequently, on June 14, 2023, he was charged with the murder of Larry Fuller in the 6th Judicial District Court. Monica Escalante, the daughter of Paula Silva, Larry's wife, expressed her mother's profound emotional struggle in coping with the tragedy. Monica described the arrest of David Hendren as surreal, recounting that the investigator who informed her the arrest revealed that Hendren claimed that he had not intended to take Larry's life, but had mistaken him for someone else. Monica, who was 25 years old when Larry was killed, regarded him as a father figure and emphasized his compassionate and capable nature. Larry's murder had a lasting impact on the family, with Monica and the rest of her siblings hearing unsettling rumors in the community about various individuals possibly involved. Living in constant fear, Monica described the profound effect the unresolved case had on her mother, stating that she never truly healed from the loss. Monica imagined that if her mother were still alive, she would experience a mixture of happiness and sadness, likely shedding tears of both joy and sorrow. Currently, David Hendren awaits extradition to Durango, where he will be placed in custody by the La Plata County Sheriff's Office. The city of Boston is the capital and largest city of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the cultural and financial center of the New England region of the northeastern United States. Boston is best known for its famous baked beans, Fenway Park, and the Boston Marathon. But this wealthy city also had a darker side. The violent crime rate in Boston is nearly double the national violent crime rate, making the city less safe than 83% of U.S. cities. And starting in 2007, a string of assaults carried out on multiple women took place in Boston's Charlestown neighborhood and continued into the next year.
For women tonight, there's been another sexual assault in the North End.
WBZ covered the string of sexual assaults in the North End extensively back in 2008.
A bustling Boston neighborhood is on alert tonight following a string of attacks against women.
3 women claimed that a man drove them, each one on a separate occasion, to a remote part of Boston after offering them a ride home. All 3 willingly accepted the offer. In all 3 cases, the man allegedly told the woman he had a weapon before assaulting them. He reportedly flashed a knife in one encounter and showed the victim a gun in another. In the 4th case, the man allegedly tackled a woman who was jogging on Terminal Street and assaulted her. The woman eventually fought him off, though he repeatedly screamed, "I have a gun." The 4 victims ranged in age from 23 to 44 at the time of the assaults and have not been publicly identified. Of the crimes that were reported, the first one took place on August 18, 2007. Matthew drove his victim to an isolated spot and ordered her to get out of the car. Once outside the car, Matthew told her to shut up, or he would kill her, and that he had a weapon. He then proceeded to assault her on the grassy area near a railroad track. Matthew threatened his second victim with a knife on November 22, 2007. He flashed a small knife at her and then drove to Terminal Street in Charlestown, where he ordered the victim out of the car, knocked her to the ground, and assaulted her. The third assault took place on August 5, 2008. The victim of the third assault said Matthew was armed with a gun. After they got out of the car, he tackled the victim to the ground, held a gun to her back, and assaulted her. The fourth alleged victim was a jogger who managed to fight her attacker off on December 23, 2008. Matthew ran up behind her, put arms around her upper body in a bear hug, and tackled her to the ground with his right arm around her neck. The assailant then allegedly shoved his hand down her pants and told her he had a gun before she managed to get away. Lori Pinkham, one of Matthew's victims, decided to open up publicly and shared what actually happened with her on the night Matthew abducted her.
What do you remember from that night in 2007?
Well, I had been out at one of the clubs I was doing promotions for, and I was walking to my car. He pulled up in his car next to me and kind of cut me off and started yelling to me like something like, hey, oh, hey, I saw you, do you need a ride? I was like, no, I'm okay. And that's when I saw he had a gun in his hand, and he just said, get in the car. And I just got really scared, and I got in the car.
Did you fear for your life?
Yeah, I started getting scared, and he kept driving. As soon as we got to Charlestown and he stopped the car, I tried to run as fast as I could, and he caught up to me, and that's when he...
What did that night take away from you?
It took away my freedom.
A thorough investigation was launched into the 4 cases, and it turned out that one of the victims was able to poke her attacker in his eyes during the assault, leaving the assailant's DNA on her gloves. The DNA sample was preserved, but sadly no matches were made at the time. The attacks had the city in fear. The police even offered self-defense classes to women and asked them to carry a whistle. Police released a composite sketch of the suspect, canvassed the area with flyers, and urged women in the area to be on high alert. The detectives suspected that all 4 cases might be connected, and the sketch might make someone step forward who knew the perpetrator. The detectives searched for any potential leads or any new evidence in the cases, but found nothing. As the years passed, the investigation lost its pace, and the cases went cold. After lying dormant for 15 years, the cases were reopened in 2022. Joseph Bonavolanta from the Boston FBI joined Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox and Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden to work the case. The investigators made use of forensic genetic genealogy, which combines DNA technology with historical record searches to find new suspects in cold cases, to link him to the unsolved spree. A DNA profile was developed using the DNA sample that was earlier preserved, which then matched a 35-year-old New Jersey lawyer named Matthew Nilo. This profile was 314 times more likely to belong to Matthew Nilo than to any other male in the population. Investigators said they began surveilling Matthew in early 2023 after he was identified as a person of interest in the 15-year-old assault cases. The FBI agents obtained utensils and drinking glasses that Matthew had used at a corporate event. Genetic material from one of the glasses was subsequently matched to the suspect profile. Investigators said that they zeroed in on Matthew using publicly available DNA databases. Matthew was lured to the scene of his arrest with his fiancée by a bogus package report. On May 30, 2023, the FBI and police arrived at Weehawken apartment building, where Matthews was staying at the time. They made the front desk call Matthews' apartment to say that an oversized package had been delivered for him. Matthew was then arrested in the lobby of his apartment building, in front of his new fiancée, Laura Griffin. Matthew, who previously lived in Boston's North End, had proposed to Laura shortly before he was taken into custody. Matthew Nilo grew up in the North End and attended Boston Latin School. Graduating in 2006, he attended college in Wisconsin and law school in San Francisco, At the time of the assaults, Nilo was between 19 and 20 years old and was in Boston, his hometown, on break from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he obtained his bachelor's degree. At the time of his arrest, Matthew was a cyber claims attorney for Campbell, a firm which provided cyber insurance. His employment was suspended pending the ongoing investigation. The company said a background check was conducted prior to Matthew being hired, and that no concerns were raised at that time. Matthew was charged with 3 degrees of aggravated assault, 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of indecent assault and battery, and 1 count of assault with intent to harass. Matthew pleaded not guilty to all of those charges in Suffolk Superior Court on Monday, June 5, 2023. During his court hearing on June 5, 2023, Suffolk County Assistant District Attorney Lynn Feigenbaum went over the details of the cases against him.
Outside of the car, the male told her to shut up or he would kill her, and that he had a weapon. He flashed a small knife at her. He then drove to Terminal Street in Charlestown, where he ordered the victim out of the car, knocked her to the ground.
The attacks all occurred in 2007 and 2008. Laura Matthews' fiancé, who was clutching rosary beads, was present at the proceedings. After pleading not guilty, Matthew was held with his bail, set at $500,000 on Tuesday, June 6, 2023. Matthew's defense attorney, Joseph Catalado, accused the police of potentially obtaining his client's DNA illegally. He said that they obtained Matthew's DNA evidence without ever obtaining a search warrant, and that's an issue that will be pursued vigorously. On June 15, 2023, Matthew's fiancée Laura posted his bail, after which he was required to surrender his passport, wear a GPS monitoring device, and stay away from both the alleged victims and Terminal Street. On June 27, 2023, it came to light that Matthew had been indicted for 5 more assaults during the same time period in Boston's North End. The new charges stemmed from 5 attacks on 4 different women. A grand jury indicted Matthew on charges that took place between January of 2007 through July of 2008. Disturbingly, one of the victims was attacked twice in January 2008, just 11 days apart. The attacks happened in the early morning. One attack on January 14, 2008, took place on Charter Street during a snowstorm. On July 4, 2008, an attack took place on Foster Street. Prosecutors said that all the incidents followed a somewhat similar pattern. The victims were attacked while walking alone, in the dark, either at night or early in the morning. The attacks occurred in January 2007, July 2007, January 2008, and July 2008. The newly indicted attacks occurred at the time that Matthew was living in the North End, and during the same period as the attacks against women in Charlestown. These charges were in addition to the Charlestown attacks that Matthew had already been charged with. Wisconsin police said they were working with the Boston Police Department to see if any other old cases are connected to Matthew. In a statement on Tuesday, June 27, 2023, Matthew's attorney said that Matthew had denied all the allegations, including the latest charges, and that he's planning both a legal and factual challenge to the government's case. Matthew is due back in court on July 13, 2023, with a trial set for June 2024. Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden said that more information will be released at the arraignment, and that DNA evidence played a major role in these new indictments. He praised the cooperation and coordination between the DA's office, the Boston Police Department, and the FBI that secured Matthew's indictments, and gave the survivors of these crimes the ability to see their attacker held accountable for his actions. He also promised that this case demonstrated that no attack will go uninvestigated, no suspect will go unpursued, and no amount of time will insulate a criminal from a crime. Hayden urged victims of any crime, including domestic violence or any assault, to call 911 in an emergency. Goolgong, a charming town in New South Wales, Australia, embodies the essence of small-town living. With its idyllic surroundings and golden fields, it radiates tranquility and rural charm. The tight-knit community fosters safety through community watch programs and collaborations with local authorities. However, on March 2, 1999, Gulgong, despite being generally considered a safe place, was shaken by a heinous act that left its community in shock. The tragic incident involved the assault and murder of a 17-year-old girl named Michelle Bright. Born in 1982, Michelle Bright was a young girl who had a deep love for animals and harbored dreams of becoming a veterinary nurse. Her warm and loving nature endeared her to those around her, particularly her mother, Lorraine Bright. With a promising future ahead, Michelle's life seemed full of possibilities. However, fate had a tragic turn in store. In the early hours of February 27, 1999, tragedy struck as Michelle Bright went missing while walking home from a friend's 15th birthday party in Gulgong. Concern for her well-being, a missing person report was filed with the police, initiating an immediate search effort. The community and law enforcement joined forces to comb the area in search of Michelle, hoping for her safe return. However, a heartbreaking discovery came 3 days later on March 2, 1999, when her lifeless body was found, concealed in long grass by the side of Barney's Reef Road. The details surrounding Michelle's tragic death were deeply unsettling. Her blouse had been pushed up, the clasp of her bra torn off, and her jeans and underwear were found around her ankles. During the autopsy, Michelle's body exhibited grazes on her abdomen, thighs, and knuckles. Unfortunately, the cause of her death could not be definitively determined. The autopsy report cited her death as resulting from homicidal violence of an undetermined etiology, indicating that the exact nature of the circumstances of the violence that led to her untimely demise could not be conclusively established. The investigation into Michelle's murder were marked by the unwavering determination of the police to uncover the truth and bring the perpetrator to justice. However, despite their diligent efforts, the identity of their killer remained elusive for years. The case took on an even more unsettling dimension, as there had been another young woman in Gulgong who fell victim to a familiar violent attack about a year before Michelle's murder. In this case, the victim was choked in an attempted assault, but the assailant was never apprehended. Law enforcement authorities strongly believed that the two incidents might be connected, leading them to suspect that the same perpetrator could be responsible for both crimes. During the initial stages of the investigation into Michelle's murder, the last confirmed sighting of her was at 12:45 a.m. on February 27, 1999, when a friend dropped her off at Main Street. This friend was approached by the police for any potential information that could assist in cracking the case. However, despite their interaction, the friend did not possess any valuable piece of information that could lead to a breakthrough in the investigation. In an effort to encourage leads and assist in solving the murder of Michelle, the Minister of Police, Michael Daly, announced that New South Wales government would provide a substantial reward of $500,000. This reward was the second highest ever offered in New South Wales. However, the case still went cold. After 21 years of the case remaining unsolved, the police department made the decision to reopen the investigation into the heinous murder of Michelle Bright. On August 10, 2020, the New South Wales Police took to social media and posted on their Facebook page, announcing a significant development. The reward for any information that could lead to solving Michelle Bright's murder had been increased to a staggering $1 million.
Detectives who have reinvestigated 99 murder of teenager Michelle Bright are appealing to the community for their assistance following an announcement that the increase of the reward to $1 million has been announced today.
Miraculously, just the next day, on August 11, 2020, a significant breakthrough occurred in the long-dormant case of Michelle Bright's murder. Craig Henry Rumsby, a 53-year-old man, was apprehended by the police on the side of the road in Mudgee, located northwest of Sydney. Nevertheless, there was initially no public disclosure regarding the connection between him and the murder. However, the most interesting part of this was that Rumsby had left a comment on the post by the NSW police on August 10th. The comment said, "It's so sad they haven't caught the killer. Michelle was like a sister to me. I feel sorry for the family." On August 17, 2020, Craig Henry Rumsby was brought to the Mudgee police station and formally charged with the murder of Michelle Bright. Additionally, he faced 2 separate counts related to his alleged involvement in the 2 distinct incidents. The first count pertained to the murder of Michelle Bright, charging Rumsby with the specific offense related to her case. The second count was connected to the previous incident, specifically the attempted assault of an 18-year-old girl at a New Year's Eve party in 1998. Rumsby faced charges of inflicting actual bodily harm with the intent of forceful violation on the victim, as well as attempting to choke or strangle with the intent to commit an indictable offense. Following his arrest and charges, Craig Henry Rumsby made his appearance before the Mudgee local court on August 19, 2020. During the court proceedings, Rumsby chose not to apply for bail. The registrar, Anthony Goodwin, formally canceled the bail application. The latter trial was set for April 2023, which lasted 9 weeks. During the trial, Rumsby faced questioning regarding the attempted assault case from 1998. Despite making a confession to undercover police prior to his arrest, Rumsby denied both charges during the trial. Despite the absence of physical evidence directly linking Craig Henry Rumsby to the murder of Michelle Bright, an intriguing discovery emerged during the trial. It was revealed that Rumsby's wallet had been found at the scene of the attempted assault that occurred in 1988. During the trial, the jury heard compelling testimony from the victim of the 1998 attempted assault. It was revealed that the victim did not press charges at the time and had retracted her statement due to fears of going to court and having her character discredited. However, during her testimony, she bravely recounted the harrowing incident to the jury. She described how her assailant emerged from the shadows, physically assaulting her by hitting her and grabbing her throat. He then forced her to the ground and assaulted her while issuing threats to silence her, even going as far as threatening her life. Fortunately, the assailant fled when her boyfriend arrived and intervened, wielding a concrete manhole cover as a deterrent. Moreover, an interesting revelation was then brought to light regarding Craig Henry Rumsby's initial response in 2020 when questioned about Michelle Bright's murder. Rumsby reportedly stated that he could have been walking down the dark, rural road that night and heard footsteps behind him, which prompted him to attack the person and render them unconscious. In the initial interrogation, Rumsby had confessed that he had covered Michelle's mouth with his hands and had maintained pressure for approximately 10 minutes until she ceased breathing. He then disclosed that he moved her body across the road and concealed it in the grass to prevent its discovery. However, when he was questioned by the investigators about whether Michelle had screamed during the attack, Rumsby's response was peculiar. He stated, "No, that was the 18-year-old I was talking about." This statement was enough to clarify that he was not the only prime suspect for Michelle's case, but also the perpetrator behind the 1998 assault attempt case. In his confession, Craig Henry Rumsby provided further disturbing details about his actions and intentions. He admitted to waiting outside the 18-year-old woman's unit in January 1998, motivated by his attraction to her and a desire to engage in assault. Rumsby described how he tackled the young woman with the intention of carrying out his intentions, but his plans were interrupted when people from the house ran out, causing him to abandon his intentions. During the trial in June 2023, the Crown prosecutor highlighted significant similarities between the attack under examination and the assault on Michelle Bright. The prosecutor emphasized that both incidents involved an ambush-style attack on a lone individual late at night. In both cases, the victims were subjected to forceful physical contact, with specific emphasis on the assailant grabbing them by the throat. Rumsby's legal team put forth an argument, claiming that he was tricked or coerced into making his confession. But on June 30, 2023, after lengthy deliberations, the jury delivered their verdict, finding Craig Henry Rumsby guilty of both offenses. The courtroom was filled with anticipation as the verdict was announced. Following the verdict, Michelle Bright's mother spoke to the media outside the courthouse. expressing the profound impact of the decision on her family. In her statement, she conveyed a sense of relief and emphasized that the verdict had brought some long-awaited peace to her family.
We miss her so much, you know. I've waited 24 years for this, and we can have some sort of a normal life after this.
The court scheduled a hearing for July 5th to determine the appropriate date for Rumsby's sentencing. Fort Wayne, the second most populous city in Indiana, is a place where residents enjoy a diverse and thriving community. Fort Wayne's neighborhoods are known for their friendliness, with residents often coming together for block parties, local sports events, and community projects. However, even with the friendly communities, Fort Wayne still remains a city familiar with crime. On the night of May 18, 2016, around 11:16 p.m., a tragic incident occurred in Fort Wayne. The Allen County Police Department discovered two boys and a girl around the age of 17 inside a parked car on Brickshire Parkway, two of whom had suffered gunshot wounds. The girl and one boy's name were never revealed. The girls remained unharmed, but the boys' injuries were severe. They were promptly transported to the hospital, where the one whose identity was kept confidential managed to survive. However, 17-year-old Dontay White's fate had already been sealed. In the early hours of May 19, 2016, he passed away. The devastating incident had a profound impact, not only on the town of Fort Wayne, but especially on Candell White, Dontay White's mother. May 18th held a special significance for Candell, as it was her birthday, and she eagerly anticipated celebrating with her son after his shift at Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, located at the intersection of Wells Street and State Boulevard. She was ready to pick him up as soon as his shift was over. However, on that fateful night, Dontay had informed her that he didn't require a ride home. In a cruel twist of fate, while Candell eagerly awaited spending the remaining hours of her birthday with her son, she received a life-altering phone call. The call came from Parkview Regional Medical Center in Fort Wayne, plunging her into a state of deep distress. The sudden call urged Candell to rush to the hospital immediately, foreshadowing the heartbreaking news that awaited her. As the clock turned past midnight, Candell arrived at the hospital, only to be confronted with the heart-wrenching reality that her beloved son was no longer alive. The profound anguish of a mother losing her child is a pain that defies description, and Candell's condition was no exception. Overwhelmed by devastation, she found herself at a loss for words or expressions, consumed by an overwhelming sense of guilt and remorse. The repetitive thought of, "I should have picked him up, I should have picked him up," echoed incessantly within her mind, intensifying her anguish and torment. In the aftermath of the tragic incident, the Fort Wayne police responded swiftly. With the case classified as a homicide, the detectives immediately prioritized the collection of crucial evidence. Their investigative efforts centered on the survivors of the traumatic incident, considering them as key witnesses to shed light on the events that unfolded. Despite his serious injuries, the surviving boy provided his account to the officers, shedding some light on the events leading up to the tragic incident. According to his testimony, he and his girlfriend had picked up Dontay from his workplace. However, upon meeting him, Dontay said that he had plans to meet up with someone. The three individuals, including Dontay, drove to a gas station in the 9100 block of Brickshire Parkway to meet the person with whom Dontay had business. When the man arrived, he entered the vehicle's back seat and sat next to Dontay. According to the surviving boy's account, he overheard a conversation between Dontay and the man, during which the man asked Dontay to hand something over to him. At some point, the situation escalated, and the boy turned around to witness the man in the back seat pointing a gun towards the front. The boy attempted to disarm the man, resulting in him being shot during the struggle. Subsequently, the mystery man fled the scene, leaving the traumatized survivors behind. In a subsequent conversation with the detectives, the girlfriend of the surviving boy revealed further crucial information. According to her account, she disclosed that the purpose of their meeting was to engage in a transaction involving the sale of Xanax to the unknown man. Dontay, her boyfriend, and herself intended to meet with Dontay's acquaintance for this purpose. Additionally, she informed the police that she believed Dontay had prior knowledge of the unidentified man from their high school days, suggesting some level of familiarity between them. During the encounter, when her boyfriend inquired about payment for the Xanax, the man did not respond as expected. Instead, he attempted to forcefully take the bag of Xanax from Dontay, brandishing a gun in the process. The girlfriend provided further details to the investigators regarding the violent struggle that took place inside the vehicle. She recounted that gunshots were fired during the altercation, resulting in both Dontay and her boyfriend sustaining gunshot wounds. In the chaos that followed, the unidentified man exited the vehicle, prompting her to exit as well. However, her escape was short-lived. The man turned his attention towards her, pointing a gun in her direction and issuing a chilling threat. He commanded her to return to the vehicle under the threat of her life being taken as well. Later on the same day, that is May 19, 2016, the investigators took the opportunity to show the surviving boy and his girlfriend a series of photographs containing potential suspects related to the case. However, despite their willingness to cooperate, neither of them were able to recognize the man who had been involved in the tragic events of the previous night. On May 20, 2016, the detectives reconvened with the surviving boy to gather more information about the events leading up to the tragic incident. During their conversation, the boy confirmed that Dontay had indeed intended to engage in a drug transaction with the unidentified man they had met that night. Furthermore, the boy disclosed that he and Dontay had agreed to proceed with the deal, indicating their joint involvement in the drug transaction. The investigators then successfully obtained text message records between Dontay and the unidentified man, which provided crucial evidence of their agreement to engage in the drug transaction. These text messages further revealed that they had established a specific meeting location. Additionally, the investigators collected call records that shed light on Dontay's interactions with the mystery man. From these records, they discovered that Dontay had used strong language and expletives to warn the man against attempting to steal from him or engage in any form of robbery. Following the extensive interviews with various witnesses, investigators received a significant lead from Dontay's co-workers. They learned that Dontay had expressed his intention to sell drugs to an individual named Mike, who was identified as someone from high school. This information marked a breakthrough in the investigation, providing a specific name to focus their efforts on. However, the investigations surrounding Mike were not publicly disclosed, indicating that the police had conducted inquiries discreetly. Although Mike had initially been a person of interest, the subsequent investigation and evidence gathering led the authorities to clear him from any suspicions. As the investigation into Dontay's murder continued, detectives uncovered another intriguing piece of information. It was revealed that on the night of May 18, 2016, at approximately 11:27 p.m., a traffic stop had been conducted involving a 2008 silver Dodge. The driver of the vehicle was observed to be visibly shaken and crying. She explained to the officer that she had been speeding because her mother had called, informing her that her brother was in trouble and needed to be taken home. Since the investigators were already on high alert, they hoped that it would somehow connect to the case at hand. However, they couldn't find anything that would lead them further into the case. Despite the gradual emergence of various leads, the police were still facing significant challenges in solving the case surrounding Dontay's murder. However, more than a year later, on October 4, 2017, a breakthrough occurred when 3 additional witnesses came forward to meet with the investigators. They provided crucial information, revealing that they had been discussing Dontay's murder amongst themselves. During the investigation, a significant breakthrough occurred when one of the witnesses provided investigators with compelling evidence. The witness presented Michael Jones' screenshots and a screen recording of a video conversation with a man where a confession was made regarding Dontay's murder. In the video, the man admitted to intending to buy drugs from Dontay, but expressed frustration about the delay in their meeting. According to the confession, when Dontay finally arrived, a confrontation ensued, with Dontay allegedly attempting to rob the man. In self-defense, the man admitted to shooting Dontay. Following the confession and the evidence provided by the witness, the investigators now had a lead on the man responsible for Dontay's murder. However, locating and apprehending the individual proved to be a challenging task. On October 10, 2017, the investigators revisited the survivors and showed them an updated set of photographs containing additional suspects, including a picture of the man seen in the video confession. This time, the survivors positively identified the man from the video as the culprit, providing a crucial confirmation that further solidified the case against him. The police were particularly cautious, considering that the survivors had previously been unable to recognize him among the suspect's pictures shown to them. However, this time the survivors were certain of the man's identity. With further information, the mystery man was finally identified. He was Michael Harding II, who had been 19 years old at the time of the incident. Despite the fact that he was identified, the task of locating him proved to be a significant challenge for the detectives. They tirelessly searched the city, exhausting all available avenues to gather information that could lead to his whereabouts. However, no statements or leads provided them with the necessary details to track him down. Regrettably, despite being on the brink of closure, the case hit a roadblock and was put on hold. It remained a cold case, unresolved and without justice for a duration of 6 long years. The frustration of the investigators and the anguish of Dontay's family and loved ones grew as they yearned for answers and closure. On March 3, 2023, a significant breakthrough occurred in the case when investigators had a conversation with an informant who had a close relationship with Michael Harding II. The informant revealed that they had developed a long-term friendship with Harding during their time living in the same apartment complex. During their interaction, the informant had an opportunity to discuss the homicide with Harding. In a shocking revelation, the informant shared that Harding eventually admitted to the shooting, disclosing that it had resulted from a drug deal that had gone awry. According to Harding's admission, he claimed to have acted in self-defense when he shot Dontay. With further questioning, it soon came to light that the driver of the silver Dodge, who had been stopped by the police on the night of May 18, 2008, was Harding's sister. In the face of the ongoing pursuit for justice, Campbell, Dontay's grieving and helpless mother, shared her heartfelt memories of her beloved son on May 18, 2023, her own birthday, which coincided with the solemn anniversary of Dontay's passing. Despite the 7 long years that had passed since his departure, Campbell held on to her cherished memories of Dontay and sought to honor and remember him in a meaningful way. Every year on this significant day, Campbell released balloons, symbolizing her enduring love and remembrance for Dontay. It was a poignant gesture, allowing Campbell to express her enduring connection to her son and pay tribute to his memory. In the midst of her profound grief, Campbell also spoke of her unwavering hope for justice. She expressed her determination to continue seeking truth and resolution for Dontay's untimely death. As she looked ahead to Dontay's upcoming birthday on July 17th, she vowed to release yet another balloon, symbolizing her continued belief that justice would prevail. But little did she know that her hope was about to become a reality. The evidence had piled up against Harding. The only thing still left to do was find him and put him to justice. And after 7 years of investigations and piled up evidence, the police finally came face to face with Harding. On June 4, 2023, a pivotal Sunday evening at 6:30 p.m., the long-awaited moment came to fruition. Officers conducted a critical traffic stop, intercepting Harding at the intersection of Lima Road and West Coliseum Boulevard on the north side of Fort Wayne. In a swift and efficient operation, the police apprehended Harding without incident, wasting no time in taking him into custody. He was immediately placed in the secure confines of the Allen County Jail, where he would await his day in court. He was charged with felony murder, aggravated battery, attempted robbery, and intimidation with a deadly weapon. Following his arrest on June 4, 2023, Michael Harding II made his first appearance in court on June 5th. During this initial court appearance, his hearing was scheduled for June 8th at 10:30 a.m. The specific details and updates regarding the trial have not been made public at this time. However, given the weight of the evidence against Harding and the seriousness of the charges brought against him, will not be resolved easily. The accumulated evidence, witness testimonies, and investigative efforts have presented a strong case against Harding, including a challenging road ahead for his defense. Fortunately for Campbell, after enduring years of pain and waiting, the symbolic release of balloons that she planned for July 17th finally coincided with a sense of justice being served. Fresno, California, a city known for its stunning landscapes and vibrant history, harbored a chilling secret that haunted the community for decades. It was the story of Debra Curb. Born in 1957, she was a jovial and an excellent student at Fresno High School. Apart from being a great pupil, she was also a member of the California Scholarship Federation and Student Council. With her charismatic personality, she was awaiting another proud year for her on New Year's Eve in 1973. However, fate had other plans. It was the 31st December 1973, the night before New Year's, and 17-year-old Debra, along with her boyfriend and 2 other students, organized a New Year's Eve party at her family home, located on the 4000 block of College Avenue in Fresno. The party went smoothly, and after the festivities subsided, one of the other 2 students drove Debra's boyfriend and the other friend home. It seemed to have been a New Year's Eve party night that was enjoyable enough for Debra. However, all turned dark when her parents returned home on the afternoon of January 1st, 1974, and found her lying dead with her own leotard wrapped around her neck. In the wake of Debra Curb's tragic death, law enforcement swiftly launched an investigation determined to bring justice to her untimely demise. They examined the crime scene and noticed no signs of forced entry, which meant that either Debra had let the killer in or they had a key. They also collected biological evidence from the scene, including an assault kit from Debra, and saved it in the hopes that it would help later in the investigation. Their attention turned to those who had last seen her, including the attendees of her New Year's Eve party. Among them was 17-year-old James Arthur Blaylock, a student who had been present at the gathering and had offered to drive the others home when they departed from Debra's residence. As detectives delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Debra's death, their focus began to hone in on Blaylock. However, the reason behind their suspicion on Blaylock was not made public. As the investigation into Debra Curb's tragic death unfolded, detectives began to develop a theory surrounding James Arthur Blaylock's potential involvement. One line of speculation suggested that Blaylock, after driving the others home, might have returned to the Curb family home and entered using a spare key. According to this theory, he forcefully assaulted Debra before ultimately taking her life. Despite the strong suspicions surrounding Blaylock as a potential suspect in Debra Curb's case, the lack of concrete evidence hindered the ability of investigators to conclusively prove his guilt. Moreover, without advancements in forensic science and DNA analysis that we have today, investigators faced significant challenges in gathering the necessary evidence to support their theory. The absence of conclusive proof to substantiate their suspicions meant that their case gradually grew colder over time, as leads dwindled and the trail went cold. After an agonizing 32-year wait, the Fresno County Sheriff's Office decided to revisit the long, cold case of Debra Curb. Armed with new advancements in DNA testing, investigators decided to re-examine the biological evidence collected from the crime scene in the hope of finally finding a breakthrough. And to their astonishment, the results were conclusive. The DNA evidence extracted from the assault kit matched that of 50-year-old James Blaylock, breathing new life into the case. With DNA evidence finally pointing to Blaylock as a suspect in the long cold case of Debra Curb, detectives Marty Rivera and Jeff Kurtzen wasted no time in tracking him down. Their task was made relatively easier by the fact that Blaylock was already incarcerated, having committed a series of violent offenses, including assaults on prostitutes. Upon confronting James Blaylock with the DNA evidence linking him to the crime, a new obstacle emerged in the pursuit of justice for Debra Curb. Blaylock acknowledged that he engaged in intimate activity with Debra on that fateful night, but claimed it was consensual, challenging the narrative of a violent assault. This defense introduced another layer of complexity to the case, creating a potential roadblock in the pursuit of truth. Adding to the complexity was a Sheriff's Department report from September 1988, which suggested an alternative explanation for Debra's death. The report proposed the possibility that her passing might have been the result of an autoerotic incident, wherein she may have inadvertently suffocated during intimate activity. Despite the District Attorney's Office's best efforts to build a case against James Blaylock, based on the available evidence, the charges had to be dropped due to a lack of concrete proof. The pursuit of justice for Debra Curb hit yet another roadblock, leaving investigators and the community disheartened. Following the disappointment of dropping the charges against James Blaylock, frustration and a sense of starting over permeated the investigative team. Deputy Chris Curtis candidly expressed the setback to the Fresno media, acknowledging that they were effectively back to square one. He emphasized that the investigators would need to regroup, reevaluate the evidence, and forge ahead once more in the pursuit of justice. After another 15 years of waiting, December 2021 brought renewed hope to the investigation into Debra Curb's murder. Cold case detective Sergio Toscano, determined to obtain indisputable evidence linking James Blaylock to the crime, turned to even more advanced forensic techniques. Detective Toscano requested analysis to subject the fabric of the leotard, which had been used as a ligature to strangle Debra, to thorough testing. These advanced forensic methods held the potential to unearth crucial evidence that could finally establish Blaylock as the killer. After years of anticipation and waiting, the long-awaited confirmation arrived in June 2023. James Blaylock's DNA was a conclusive match to both the assault kit and the fabric of the ligature used to strangle Debra Curb. The evidence presented an undeniable link between Blaylock and the heinous act committed against Debra. The pursuit of justice for Debra Curb reached a devastating conclusion when the authorities made their final move to apprehend James Blaylock. Following the DNA confirmation, they were met with the unfortunate news that he had passed away in a hospital in 2022 at the age of 66. It is heartbreaking that Debra's parents passed away without ever discovering the truth about their daughter's fate. Nonetheless, there is a small comfort in knowing that her surviving sister would find some closure with the case finally being resolved. After nearly 5 decades of unanswered questions and lingering pain, the young woman who simply aspired to be a gracious hostess for the New Year's celebrations can finally find peace. The resolution of this case, although long overdue, brings a sense of closure and allows Debra Curb to rest in peace at last. LaGrange is a small town located in Troup County, Georgia. It had a population of approximately 20,000 residents in 1976. And it was in this town that our next case unfolded. But to go back to the beginning, Kyle Wade Clinkscales was born on October 2, 1953, in Montgomery, Alabama, to John and Louise Clinkscales. Kyle had been raised with care, and his parents adored him. In early 1976, Kyle was 22, and in his junior year at Auburn University, Alabama. He also worked as a bartender at the Moose Club in LaGrange. Kyle would commute from Auburn University to the Moose Club twice a week for his job. The commute to Auburn, Alabama from LaGrange, Georgia was about 45 miles. He never really enjoyed college, and it started to weigh on him that his parents were spending so much on his education, and he was unable to pay them back. Around January 17, 1976, he told his friend that he needed to be alone for a while to think about his life. He also said that he needed to go away. On Tuesday, January 27, 1976, Kyle finished his work at the Moose Club. It was around 11 p.m. when he left, intending to drive back to Auburn University. As he departed, a member of the Moose Club witnessed Kyle leaving in his white two-door 1974 Ford Pinto runabout. On the same day, his mother had asked him if he could press his clothes, and Kyle told her that he would come by that Friday on January 30th to pick them up. But sadly, that Friday never came. On Sunday, February 1st, Kyle's parents grew worried when he failed to make his customary call to them. Concerned, they made their way to his apartment in Auburn, Alabama, only to learn from his roommate that Kyle hadn't been seen there since Tuesday. Alarmed by his prolonged absence, Kyle's parents decided to take action and reported him missing to the police on February 3, 1976. Initially, Kyle's father speculated that his son may have chosen to vanish intentionally. Kyle had been facing difficulties at Auburn University and had previously dropped out of another school, leading his father to believe that he might have done this again and would eventually reappear. However, as time passed, it became evident that Kyle's disappearance was more troubling than initially presumed. He had only a small amount of cash, approximately $50 with him, when he left the Moose Club, and none of his credit cards had been utilized since then. Concerns grew, and suspicions of foul play began to circulate among many. In an attempt to gather information, Kyle's father offered a $1,000 reward for any leads regarding to his son's whereabouts. Unfortunately, no substantial information emerged. In the weeks immediately following Kyle's disappearance, both the Clinkscales and the Troup County Sheriff's Office launched an extensive search effort. Every possible avenue was pursued in the hopes of locating Kyle. Lakes were drained, promising rewards were offered, and deputies meticulously combed through woodlands, hoping to discover even the slightest clue. By 1978, 2.5 years after the incident, Kyle's parents had spent several $1,000s trying to solve the mystery of their son's disappearance, but they admitted that they still didn't have a single clue about what had happened. The Clinkscales hoped that their son had chosen to disappear on his own. They knew that Kyle never truly enjoyed college and sometimes felt like a burden to them, since they were helping to support him financially. And they knew that Kyle had talked to his friend about going away for a while. Despite their hopes, there were some events that raised doubts about their theory of a deliberate disappearance. Kyle had bought groceries and other items for his apartment the Sunday before he disappeared, and then he had also said that he would pick up his pressed clothes from his parents' house the coming Friday. But still, throughout the search, the Clinkscales never gave up hope. John could recall several stories of people who had chosen to disappear for years under similarly strange circumstances. They promised if Kyle was alive, they would do everything they could to find him. By September 1978, over 2.5 years since his disappearance, the Clinkscales had sent information to anyone who might be able to help them locate their son. They estimated spending more than $1,000 on stamps alone, but they had no idea about the total expenses. They also placed advertisements in various publications. Due to Kyle's fondness for New Orleans, they even bought a 100-line ad in a local newspaper there. The family had also reached out to every police department in Hawaii, a place Kyle loved, and had written to every vehicle registration office in the United States at least twice in search of his Pinto car. They had retraced his possible route multiple times, checking if his car could have fallen into any bodies of water along the way. Although there were some promising leads, none of them led to any concrete results. For example, a woman from Dallas, Texas, claimed to have seen someone who looked like Kyle, prompting the Clinkscales to drive to Texas and contact every sheriff's department. Another sighting occurred in Waco, Texas, but it didn't yield any information. In their relentless pursuit, the Clinkscales had distributed almost 5,000 bumper stickers, asking for information about their son. They even hoped to attract the attention of a major television network to raise awareness about disappearance cases like Kyle's. Until a major breakthrough occurred or their son was found, the Clinkscales held on to the hope and remained determined to be reunited with Kyle. Despite the passage of time, Louise and John could not shake the weight of their son's disappearance. Whenever they left their LaGrange home to continue their search for him, one of them would always leave behind a heartfelt note. In the event that their son Kyle made a sudden return while they were away, his parents wanted him to be aware of the significant changes that had taken place since his last sighting in 1976, when he was just 22 years old. Expressing their unwavering love, the Clinkscales would pen heartfelt messages, assuring Kyle that they still held him dear in their hearts. Additionally, they would place a spare car key on the dining room table, symbolizing their readiness to embrace him should he reappear. In 1981, a man named Danny Moore, residing in Oregon, made a startling claim that he was Kyle Clinkscales, the missing individual. According to Moore, he had been involved in a car accident in 1976, resulting in amnesia. To substantiate his assertion, he sent a letter to Kyle's parents, which they believed bore a striking resemblance to their son's handwriting. However, their situation took an unexpected turn when Danny Moore's own parents came forward and contradicted his claim. They stated that he was in fact their biological son and that he had never experienced any form of amnesia. In the same year, John published a book on his missing son's case named Kyle's Story, Friday Never Came. In the coming years, the Clinkscales actively became advocates for families facing similar situations with missing loved ones, extending their support and drawing attention to lesser-known cases. Their efforts aimed to shed light on these instances that had not received significant public attention. As a result, the Clinkscales were honored among a select group invited to the White House on April 3, 1985. During this special gathering, they had the opportunity to meet with President Ronald Reagan and discuss strategies and initiatives to address the pressing concerns surrounding missing and exploited children. On May 27, 1987, a man walking his dogs near Flat Shoal Creek in Troup County, Georgia, made an unexpected discovery. He stumbled upon an Exxon credit card, which turned out to belong to Kyle. Curiously, the card had expired in 1973, 3 years prior to Kyle's disappearance. It seemed likely that Kyle's wallet had been stolen back in 1973, and the person responsible for the theft had subsequently discarded the credit card. Although intriguing, this finding did not yield any substantial leads in the investigation. Then in 1996, the police turned their attention to a convicted felon named Ray Hyde. They suspected his involvement in Kyle's death, given his ownership of a salvage yard and potential connection to car theft. Since Kyle's car, the Ford Pinto, was still missing, the police thought that Ray might have an answer. A thorough search of Ray's salvage yard was conducted in the hopes of locating Kyle's car or his remains, but nothing was found. When approached by reporters, Ray denied any involvement. Unfortunately, the investigation hit a roadblock. Tragically, Ray Hyde passed away in 2001, leaving behind unanswered questions in the case. After Ray's death, a significant development occurred when a man came forward, claiming that as a 7-year-old child, he had witnessed Ray Hyde disposing of Kyle's body. This witness corroborated the earlier narrative implicating Ray Hyde in Kyle's death. As a result, the police's attention turned to a man named Jimmy Earl Jones, who was Ray's partner. During questioning, Jimmy confessed to having knowledge about the events surrounding Kyle's disappearance. According to Jimmy's account, on the night of January 20, 1976, he assisted Ray in disposing of Kyle's body, which had been discarded in a pond. It appeared that Kyle had been fatally shot, presumably by Ray Hyde. However, prior to Ray's death, he confided in Jimmy that he had returned to the pond, retrieved the body, and relocated it to an undisclosed location. Jimmy himself was never informed about its new whereabouts. However, subsequent discussions with the police exposed inconsistencies in Jimmy's statements. It became evident that Jimmy had fabricated the entire story. As a result, he was arrested in 2005 and charged with making false statements. In May 2006, Jimmy pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. In between these events, John Clinkscales, while looking for his son, sadly passed away on May 13, 2007, and then Jimmy was released 7 years later in 2013. On January 9, 2021, almost 45 years after Kyle's disappearance, Louise Clinkscales also passed away at the age of 92. But on December 7, 2021, 11 months after Louise's death, a twist emerged. The police received a notification regarding the discovery of a vehicle submerged in a creek near County Road 83 in Chambers County, Alabama. It was brought to their attention by a truck driver who spotted it around 11:20 a.m. To their grim surprise, human remains were found inside the vehicle. The car in question was a Ford Pinto, the same car that had belonged to Kyle. Further examination of the car revealed the presence of Kyle's wallet, credit cards, and identification. These personal belongings confirmed the connection to Kyle. Finally, on February 19, 2023, the remains recovered from the vehicle were officially identified as those of Kyle Clinkscales, bringing closure to the long-standing mystery. And shortly after that, his remains were buried in the Shadowlawn Cemetery in LaGrange. The police were not able to identify the circumstances of Kyle's death, as the case was too old and there was no circumstantial evidence. It was both a revelation and a saddening incident for the people who knew the Clinkscales. Sadly, both of Kyle's parents had died before they could get closure. In 2008, Chicago, Illinois was a dynamic and diverse city with a rich cultural heritage and a reputation as a vibrant urban center. Among this strong spirit, a beautiful daughter was born to loving parents. Her story was as dynamic as the city, but much less vibrant. Kayla Unbehaun was born on July 5, 2008, in the western suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. Her parents, Ryan Eskerka and Heather Unbehaun, separated when she was very young, and custody was awarded to Ryan. This was due to Heather regularly missing court dates for custody disputes.
We had gone to court and made agreements for how we'd follow an order, and she couldn't follow that. She couldn't follow the order that we agreed upon in court. So she repeatedly had not followed what it said.
In 2014, Ryan married Lisa, and they had 2 more children. Ryan still had custody of Kayla during this time. On July 4, 2017, a day before her 9th birthday, Kayla spent her day with her mother, Heather. According to the court order, Kayla was supposed to be returned to Ryan the next day. However, Heather and Kayla didn't show up for the scheduled exchange, causing immediate concern. The police were contacted, and an investigation was launched. It was discovered that Heather had deleted all her social media accounts and turned off her phone. Authorities learned that Heather had been seen packing her belongings onto the roof of her car. Her family members mentioned that she had planned a camping trip to an undisclosed location in Wisconsin and was expected to return on July 5th at 7 p.m. to return to Kayla and Ryan. Ryan reported both Kayla and Heather as missing persons, and Heather was subsequently charged with child abduction, a Class 4 felony. The South Elgin police worked tirelessly following leads and tips and collaborating with law enforcement agencies across the country. In an effort to find Kayla and Heather, Ryan created a GoFundMe page to seek donations and gather information. He explained that the funds would be used to hire a private investigator and cover any other costs related to their search and well-being. Ryan emphasized that the safety and return of Kayla were of utmost importance to him and his family, and they deeply appreciated any support received through the funding campaign. Gradually, the case was losing value as there were no leads or information about Kayla and her mother. And in this manner, almost 6 years had passed since their disappearance. From July 2017 to May 2023, the GoFundMe page raised over $2,500 towards its $10,000 goal. In November 2022, Kayla's photograph was featured on an episode of Netflix's Unsolved Mysteries. At the end of the episode, titled Abducted by a Parent, missing posters and age progression images from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were displayed. For a brief moment, around 5 seconds, a photo of Kayla at the age of 9 appeared on screen, alongside an image depicting how she might look as a teenager. On May 13, 2023, a woman was shopping at the upmarket consignment shop in the Westgate Regional Shopping Center in Asheville, North Carolina. While there, she recognized Heather Unbehaun, who she had seen in pictures on Unsolved Mysteries, and remembered that the child with her was missing. The woman promptly informed the store employee of her suspicion, who then contacted the Asheville police. The Asheville police got in touch with the South Elgin police, confirming the identities of Heather Unbehaun and her 15-year-old daughter, Kayla Unbehaun. Heather, who was 40 years old, was taken into custody, and Kayla was swiftly reunited with her father. Following Heather Unbehaun's arrest in Buncombe County, she was charged with the felony offense of extradition, but she chose not to waive her rights. She posted a $25,000 bond and was released from custody. However, she later turned herself in to Kane County, Illinois, where she faced an abduction charge. During a court appearance on May 18, 2023, before Judge Julia Yetter, Heather was released on bond and required to wear an electronic monitoring device. Ryan obtained an order of protection against Heather, prohibiting her from being within 1,000 feet of his residence and leaving Illinois without court permission. Heather's next scheduled court date was on July 11, 2023. Ryan, Kayla's father, expressed his joy and gratitude in a statement issued through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He thanked the Elgin Police Department, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and all the other law enforcement agencies involved in the case. Ryan also expressed his appreciation to the followers of the Bring Kayla Home Facebook page, who played a vital role in keeping Kayla's story alive and raising awareness. He requested privacy as they reconnect and embark on this new chapter. South Elgin Chief of Police Jerry Krauschek extended his gratitude to citizens across the country and other law enforcement agencies for their dedicated efforts in helping bringing Kayla home. He confirmed that Kayla was in good condition and in good spirits since being reunited with her father. Denver, the capital city of Colorado, is an energetic urban center situated in the magnificent Rocky Mountains. Renowned for its awe-inspiring natural scenery and a flourishing urban lifestyle, Denver seamlessly combines contemporary elements with a profound historical legacy. Yet lurking beneath the city's well-known exterior lies a mysterious tale that has puzzled communities for an extended period of time. On December 7, 1994, the busy Broadway Plaza Motel at 1111 Broadway in Denver was filled with activity. Amidst the patrons on that particular night was Rita Desjardine, a 39-year-old mother. On December 6, 1994, the staff members of the hotel, as was their duty to check on their customers every night, went to check in on Rita, but the maid got no response from her. Consequently, the hotel staff assumed that she might have been asleep. However, during their check on the next day, on December 7th, when they still got no response from Rita, the hotel staff decided to use their master key to ensure the well-being of their customer. To their astonishment, upon opening the door, the maid was confronted with a perplexing scene. Rita's lifeless body lay in the room, unclothed, with evident signs of blood, bruising, and swelling. Upon immediate notification, investigators from the Denver Police Department swiftly arrived at the scene. They meticulously examined the hotel room and discovered a shattered table with a detached leg, along with both men's and women's clothing present. During their investigation, they collected crucial evidence from the room, such as a bloody palm and fingerprints on a bedsheet, as well as a pair of men's shorts and even items like glasses and a gin bottle that had been opened. Her remains were then sent for a post-mortem examination. The results were promptly attained, revealing that her cause of death was determined to be asphyxia due to smothering. However, despite the presence of prints found at the crime scene, they provided no meaningful leads. Neither print was distinct enough for conclusive comparison. As a result, the bedsheets containing the prints were forwarded to the FBI in November 1995 for further analysis. During the investigation, the authorities sought out witnesses for potential leads. One witness provided a statement of significance, informing the police that she had observed an African-American man leaving the motel room in question. Despite the presence of various fragments of evidence, the investigation failed to yield a definitive breakthrough, causing the case to eventually go cold. However, after a span of 23 years, in March 2018, detectives decided to collect swabs from the gin bottle recovered from the crime scene. These samples were then submitted to the combined DNA index system for analysis. A few months later, the results returned with a significant match for a man who had been residing in Virginia at the time. The match led investigators to identify the individual as 56-year-old Stephen Cumberbatch. Additionally, records from Denver revealed that Cumberbatch had been arrested approximately 1 month before Rita Desjardine's murder, and the arrest had taken place just 2 blocks away from the Broadway Plaza Motel. During the summer of 2018, the pair of men's shorts that had been collected from the crime scene was subjected to testing. The results, which arrived in September 2019, revealed a partial match to Stephen Cumberbatch. Subsequently, in the following month, a special agent from the Virginia State Police drafted a warrant to obtain buccal swabs and palm prints from Cumberbatch. Further testing conducted by the Denver Police Department's crime laboratory conclusively identified the palm print found on the bedsheet as belonging to Stephen Cumberbatch's left palm. In addition, DNA evidence provided a definitive link between Cumberbatch and the crime. The strength of this evidence was deemed sufficient to warrant the submission of charges to the district attorney's office. After a period of 2 years, in June 2021, Stephen Cumberbatch was extradited to Colorado to face the charges against him. Following the legal proceedings on Friday, June 23, 2023, he was pronounced guilty of murder. As a result, Cumberbatch was sentenced to life imprisonment for the crime he committed. In a heartfelt statement, Rita's daughter Jennifer New expressed her gratitude to all those involved in the case. She acknowledged that after 29 long years, she can now find solace and closure, knowing that justice has been served. With love for her mother, Jennifer shared her sentiments, bringing a sense of closure to their painful journey. The Bronx is famous for its co-op city, the largest cooperative-owned space in America. This division is also home to the iconic Yankee Stadium, the largest urban zoo, the Bronx Zoo, and the gorgeous New York City Botanical Gardens. But this beautiful place also has a scary side. The Bronx has the highest rate of violent crime in the city. The rate of violent crime in the Bronx is significantly higher than the crime rate of other neighborhoods. And in late 2000, a horrifying incident took place here that shocked the whole state of New York. In December 2000, 19-year-old Dorita Delvalle Almontaser, a high school dropout, was living in the Bronx, working tirelessly to keep her life together with the hopes of making it big someday. Dorita's mother, Dora Delvalle, described her as a hard worker and a very empathetic person. Dorita had hoped to earn her high school equivalency diploma soon and go to college. She wanted to do something with her life. Dorita had quit her job at McDonald's just a few months prior and had applied at Kmart and Toys R Us. Dorita had moved out of her childhood home 3 years ago in 1997, when she got married to a man named David Almontaser. Even after that, she remained close to her family and used to speak daily with her mother. When Dorita's maternal grandmother died in March 2000, she helped her mother through several dark months by being there for her emotionally. People often define Dora as a sweet and affectionate girl with a loving personality. December 2, 2000 was a Sunday night, and Dorita was house-sitting for her uncle in the second-floor apartment at 1186 East 180th Street, near the Bronx River Parkway. She lived with her husband, David Almontaser, nearby, but since her uncle was hospitalized at the time, she had decided to help him out. And around 7:35 p.m. that same Saturday night, Dorita's mother Dora came to the uncle's house to check on her daughter. To her horror, she found her beloved Dorita dead, with a telephone cord wrapped around her neck. Dora couldn't believe her eyes. She pulled herself together and informed the authorities about the terrible incident. Within a few minutes, officers from the New York Police Department arrived at the scene. The detectives quickly determined that Dorita appeared to have died of strangulation. The door to the apartment was closed, but not locked, and there were no signs of forced entry. The detective suspected that Dorita had known her assailant. As foreign bodily fluids and a fingerprint on a telephone were recovered from the crime scene, the detectives did not think that the attack took place in the course of a robbery. Janet Rosario, a 40-year-old woman who lived one floor above the apartment in which Dorita was killed, said that Dora Delvalle, Dorita's mother, rang her buzzer about 7 p.m. on Saturday, December 2, 2000, to get into the building as Dorita herself wasn't responding to the buzzer. Dora wanted to visit her daughter to check on her. Several minutes later, Janet heard Dora screaming. She had discovered her daughter's body. Janet said that she last saw Dorita around 9 p.m. on Friday, when Dorita had stopped by her apartment to collect Avon orders and money on behalf of her mother. Dorita was dressed in a black leather jacket and jeans and was wearing some old jewelry. Dorita's brother, Juan Delvalle, had last seen his sister on Thursday, November 30th, 2000, when the two spent the day at their mother's home, talking, joking, and playing Nintendo. He also said his sister's best friend told him that Dorita had invited a man she met on an internet chat room to her uncle's apartment. He was supposed to meet her at the apartment and take her bowling. Juan informed the detectives that he had wanted Dorita to not go out with strangers and not to trust anyone so blindly, but she had done it anyway. On December 3, 2000, more than a dozen friends and relatives gathered at Dorita's mother's home in the Bronx to celebrate the time Dorita spent with them and remember her. The detectives dedicated long hours to Dorita's case, but with no strong evidence or potential suspects, the investigation seemed to be going nowhere. And eventually, within the next few months, Dorita's case went cold. About 5 years later, in Yonkers, another tragedy struck. A dreadful incident took place here, where a young mother's life was mercilessly taken away from her. Angel Leon Serbay was born in 1980, although not much is known about Angel's early life in 2005, when Angel was about 25 years old and was living in Yonkers, Westchester County, New York. She also had a 5-year-old son who used to live with Susan, Angel's mother. Susan described Angel as a lost soul who was trying her best to find her way. Angel was a troubled young adult who used to hang out with a tough crowd. She also had a record of minor arrest for drugs. Angel asked her mother to take care of her 5-year-old son till she got her life back on track and was ready to look after him, but sadly that day never came. On September 3, 2005, a passerby noticed something strange on the shoulder of the Springbrook Parkway in Greensburg, Yonkers, neighboring town in Westchester County. It was Angel's lifeless body, wrapped up in a leopard print blanket. The New York Police Department was immediately informed, and within moments the detectives arrived to inspect the crime scene. The marks on Angel's body indicated that she had been beaten and strangled. An autopsy report later revealed that Angel had been assaulted before being strangled to death. During the autopsy, a bodily fluid belonging to the perpetrator was collected and sent for preservation. The detectives dedicated many hours to Angel's case, but even after an intense investigation, there were no traces of the perpetrator. A year after Angel's death, her mother Susan pleaded for the public's help in finding her daughter's killer. But even after that, no significant developments were made in Angel's case. And soon, Angel's case joined the pile of many other cold cases. In 2016, while Angel's case remained untouched, the task force renewed the investigation into Dorita's case, with hopes of catching her killer. Bronx detectives resubmitted the fingerprint found at Dorita's murder scene to a national database. In a stroke of luck, it matched a man named Christopher Gonzalez from Naples, Florida, whose fingerprints were on file because he had not paid a fine following his arrest in a 2005 forged license case in the Bronx. In another traffic violation case where Gonzalez was caught driving without a license in early 2017, he was fined by the Collier County Sheriff's Office. Gonzalez reportedly paid a $500 bond and was quickly back home in Naples, Florida. On November 7, 2017, Christopher Gonzalez was arrested in connection to Rita Almontaser's murder and assault. At this time, Gonzalez was an employee at Toys R Us and was living in Florida with his girlfriend. On December 8, 2017, Gonzalez was extradited to New York. The investigators recalled Gonzalez being very careful not to touch anything in case he might leave his DNA behind. The detectives arranged for a warrant to collect Gonzalez's DNA and confirmed that it matched the evidence found at Dorita's crime scene. Shockingly, in 2019, almost 14 years after Angel's murder, the detectives decided to run a search of Angel's killer's DNA from the fluid at the crime scene through their databases. They found a perfect match, and surprisingly, the DNA results led the police back to Christopher Gonzalez, who was already in custody for Dorita's murder. While the detectives connected Gonzalez to Angel's murder, they still kept the investigation going. They learned that Gonzalez had lived near Dorita in the Bronx at the time she was killed, and later in Yonkers' Nodine Hill neighborhood, where Angel had been staying in 2005. On May 16, 2019, Gonzalez was indicted in Westchester County for Dorita and Angel's murder, and charged on 2 counts of murder in the first degree, and 1 count each of assault in the first degree and criminal act in the first degree. Gonzalez denied having any involvement in both the murders. But in December 2022, just a few days before Christmas, Gonzalez had a change of heart and admitted to committing both crimes. On January 18, 2023, Gonzalez reached a plea deal that allowed him to plead guilty to second-degree murder in each case. Gonzalez acknowledged strangling Angel when acting State Supreme Court Justice Robert Neary asked him how he killed her. But he said he couldn't remember the specifics of where he left her body, only that it was somewhere on a highway. On March 17, 2023, in Westchester County Court, upon submitting his plea, Judge Robert Neary sentenced Gonzalez to 2 concurrent sentences of 20 years to life for the murders of Angel Serbay and Rita Delvalle Almontaser, though assault charges were taken off the table as part of a plea deal. Gonzalez would not be allowed to appeal the conviction according to the plea deal. In a statement read in court, Susan, Angel's mother, thanked law enforcement for never giving up on Angel's case and said that while she was grateful that Angel's murderer, Christopher Gonzalez, was eventually caught, the years of waiting had taken a toll on her. She added that she believed Christopher to be an evil, ruthless, soulless man, and she'll never forgive him for what he did to Angel. Westchester County District Attorney Miriam E. Rocca thanked the New York State Police, the NYPD, the Collier County Sheriff's Office, and the Bronx District Attorney's Office for their assistance in Angel and Dorita's case. She also stated that she was proud of the police departments for bringing justice to Angel and Dorita and their loved ones. A close childhood friend of Angel, Teresa Lopez, was at the court as she had been for most of Gonzalez's appearances. Teresa said she was actually stuck in traffic on the Springbrook Parkway on September 3, 2005, not knowing that it was because police were there investigating the death of her friend. Teresa said that she was happy her friend's killer had finally been caught. Dora Delvalle, Dorita's mother, stated that she felt sorry for Angel because if Gonzalez had been caught after Dorita's murder, Angel would still have been alive.
Debra had caught him sooner, like I said, when this happened, that girl Yonkers would have been alive.
Even though Gonzalez was now behind bars, Dora felt that he got to enjoy a major chunk of his life while she suffered through the pain of losing her daughter and living her life without her.
Why he got caught now? After he enjoyed his life. He had fun. He had kids. He celebrated all the holidays. All the holidays that I missed my daughter, he had fun.
Caney Valley is located within Commissioner District 4, a minor civil division of Claiborne County in Tennessee. Even though it was relatively one of the safer places in the county, one of the most disheartening crimes took place here, back in 1986. On August 24, 1986, skeletal remains were discovered by hunters along an isolated and abandoned trail in Caney Valley area of Claiborne County. Agents from the TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, began working alongside the Claiborne County Sheriff's Office in investigating the death. Forensic anthropologists determined that the skeletal remains were those of a white male, likely between the age of 30 and 40. They also found out that the victim had been shot, and hence his death was ruled a homicide. At the time, the University of Tennessee Anthropology Department determined that the man had been deceased for 6 months before his remains were found. But with no suspect in the case and no way to identify the man, he was put into the system as a John Doe. Apart from the remains, the investigators hardly had any solid evidence in this case. With no leads to follow, the investigation went cold. In 2015, the University of Tennessee Forensic Anthropology Center sent a sample of the unidentified man's remains to University of North Texas Center for Human Identification, and later a DNA profile was developed and entered into the Combined DNA Index System, CODES, and the National Missing and Unidentified Person System in hopes that the man would eventually be identified. More than 6 years later, in December 2022, TBI agents submitted a sample of the man's remains to Othram Inc., a private lab based in Texas, for forensic genetic genealogical DNA testing. Othram used forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile for the unknown man. Othram's in-house genealogy team used forensic genetic genealogy to provide TBI agents with information about possible relatives connected to the man. With the assistance of the Hot Springs Police Department and Pine Bluff Police Department in Arkansas, agents were able to obtain familial DNA standards for possible siblings of the man who lived in Arkansas. A TBI intelligence analysis used the information to locate potential family members of the man in Arkansas. Agents made contact with 2 of the individuals who confirmed that they had a brother that had not been heard from in more than 4 decades. In a statement on June 7, 2023, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation announced that a genealogical DNA testing had confirmed the identity of the unknown murder victim. Experts from TBI and the University of Texas Center for Human Identification, with the help of Othram Inc., identified the man as Jerry Harrison. Jerry was born on December 20, 1957, in Little Rock, Arkansas. He would have been 27 or 28 at the time of his death. Jerry had lost contact with his family in 1982, when he was around the age of 25, after he began traveling across the country 4 years before his death. Though the mystery of Jerry's identity has been solved, the cold case is only half solved. Who killed Jerry remains unknown. Now the TBI wants to identify Jerry's killer, and the agency is asking for help from the public. If you have any information regarding Jerry Harrison, please do not hesitate to contact the authorities. While Charlotte, North Carolina is known for its big city vibes, it is also full of friendly people. But contrary to its bright and friendly side, Charlotte ranks at the top of the most unsafe cities for violent crimes. And one of the most disheartening crimes that ever took place in Charlotte involved the murders of a mother and son back in 1984. Sarah Mobley Hall was born on May 1, 1956. Since Sarah's mother passed away shortly after giving birth to Sarah's younger sister, Mary, Sarah and Mary were raised by their grandmother. Sarah grew up to be an outgoing person. She was helpful by nature and was well liked by everyone. To Mary, she was a protective sister. In fact, she was more like a mother than a sister to Mary. Sarah had a lot of faith in Mary and always wanted the best for her. On September 3, 1973, when Sarah was only 17, she gave birth to a boy and named him Derrick Dion Mobley. For the next few years, Sarah struggled being a mother. But by 1984, when Derrick had grown into a jovial 10-year-old boy, she had gotten the hang of it. Derrick was a child with special needs, and he and Sarah were very close. They lived in an apartment on Ventura Way in Hidden Valley. Mary, Sarah's sister, worked nearby and often visited Sarah and Derrick to spend time with them. By this time, Sarah was 27 and working as a teacher's aide at the St. Mark's School for the Handicapped, helping children like Derrick as much as she could. On Wednesday, March 14, 1984, Sarah's neighbors called the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, notifying them that a foul smell was coming from Sarah's apartment, and the door to the apartment had been opened for days. When the officers got to Sarah's apartment to investigate, they found Sarah and Derrick dead. An initial look at the crime scene revealed that while Sarah and Derrick both had been strangled to death, Sarah was also severely beaten. Mary, Sarah's sister, was in shock. Her only sister had been taken away from her. All she wanted now was to see the perpetrator pay for their crimes. Although a DNA sample was found on a pillow at the crime scene, nothing came of it. With no strong evidence or witnesses in the case, no matches were made and the investigation led nowhere. Mary helped the detectives as much as she could, informing them about Sarah and Derrick's lives. But as the case went cold, so did Mary's hopes of ever finding her sister and nephew's killer. Police Chief Johnny Jennings and Mecklenburg Sheriff Gary McFadden were detectives at the CMPD in the 1990s who reopened Sarah and Derrick's case several times. They looked over the case even after it had gone cold. One of those times was in 1998 when Jennings looked into the case again. DNA technology had just been introduced to the world, and he thought that maybe the sample from the pillowcase could lead him to the killer. However, he had no luck in finding a match to the right person, as DNA identification was in its infancy at the time. But with new advancements in DNA technology over the next few decades, the detectives were finally able to identify Sarah and Derrick's killer. New DNA testing methods were developed, and they led to an arrest in the nearly 40-year-old murder case of Sarah and her 10-year-old son, Derrick. On Wednesday, February 1, 2023, the CMPD arrested a 60-year-old man named James Thomas Pratt. He was arrested at a hotel without incident in York County, South Carolina. Captain Joe McNally, CMPD's Violent Crimes Division commander, stated that James's criminal history included only minor misdemeanor arrests. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's cold case unit identified James using a new familial DNA technology. A grant from the Bureau of Justice Administration allowed the police department to send James's DNA to a company called Forensic Innovative Labs for forensic genetic genealogy testing. Investigators didn't find the killer initially, but they found a match to a relative of that person, and that led them to James. With the help from the FBI, investigators were then able to get James's DNA and find a direct match to what was found inside Sarah's apartment in the Hidden Valley neighborhood. However, McNally declined to comment on how James's DNA was collected. Years of extensive forensic testing and evidence examination finally put an end to Sarah and Derrick's case, but the detectives are still working to understand James's motive behind the murders. Pratt was extradited back to Mecklenburg County and is currently in the Mecklenburg County Jail. James, who was nearly 22 years old when the murders took place, was not a suspect in the original investigation, but he lived in the same neighborhood as Sarah's. He and Sarah were thought to have a friendly relationship. McNally said that Sarah's family had been waiting for 39 years, wondering what happened to their beloved Sarah and Derrick. Police notified her siblings of James's arrest. Jennings said that there was something that really pushed him to solve this case. He felt an attachment to the single mother and son who were killed inside their apartment. He added that even though he should have retired by now, he kept working with the CMPD to solve this case. He was happy that he was able to bring closure to the case and Sarah's family. McNally hoped that technology would continue to solve other cold cases as well, and stated how the cracked case had energized investigators to solve other cold cases using the same DNA comparison method. Mary, Sarah's sister, said that she carried a burden for years. She felt that she should have been with Sarah that night, thinking that the whole tragedy could have been avoided. She added that the arrest had brought great relief to her and her family, helping them lay this painful chapter to rest. Mary thanked the detectives who helped solve the case and hoped that James would spend the rest of his life behind bars.